this meeting. This is the final meeting of a project which we have done with the support of the Ford Foundation. The initiator of this project, Samar Verma, former program officer of Ford Foundation, is also with us. We'll be joined by a Ford Foundation representative sooner than later, I hope so. The project ran in two phases. The basic theme was good and better jobs. And we did a lot of field work also in this. What we generally found was that when medium and large scale units are a little more careful about their workers, the small scale sector is not at all bothered about their workers. Especially now, this project happened during the time of COVID and the aftermath of the COVID, when the economy was not doing so well. Yet, the kind of attitude, I would say, which exists is quite hopeless. And I think a very simple thing which Santosh will elaborate upon is my own understanding is that if you look after your workers, your productivity will improve. And that I have seen as myself, having been an entrepreneur. I ran a small-scale industry for about 15 years in the early 70s. And my own experience was, so I speak with a hands-on experience, that we took care of our workers to the best extent possible. I will not get into the micro details of how we took care of them, but all of them felt very, very sort of attached and committed to the organization. So even when we had downs, they would cooperate with us. For example, one year we did not give any bonus. That was fair enough, and workers understood. Now this is only about 50 workers. It wasn't a very large unit. But yet, to deal with 50 workers, if you have a kind of wavelength with them on that you're looking after the welfare all the time, it matters. And as I said, there are so many other things that I could. Now, this meeting is to witness the second phase of the project, which is basically looking at the future of work agenda for inclusive economic growth. And this important dialogue brings us one step closer to realizing India's aspiration of becoming a Viksit Bharat by 2047, as we collectively explore strategies to shape India's future of work. One extremely important element, which of course the government is well seized of, the Prime Minister does make statements now and then. I wish he spoke more about it than what he does about the industry or the entrepreneurs. That this is, after all, when you talk in terms of production, of course, lately I've also heard of people talking about robotization of their plants and speaking very, very proudly about it without understanding as to what is happening. But anyway, now India's economy, in spite of its ups and downs, is on a high growth trajectory. We are now today among the emerging market economies. We are the fastest growing economy in the world. And a key driver of this growth is the nation's dynamic labor market. Managing its labor dynamics effectively presents India with unique challenges and opportunities that are critical to enhancing productivity, competitiveness, and economic stability. We look at all these three factors as very important as an output or as an outcome. As we all agree, a well-functioning labor market plays a pivotal role in economic advancement by balancing the supply and demand for labor through productive employment and fair wages. A skilled and motivated workforce not only boosts productivity but also fuels consumption, creating a virtuous cycle for sustained long-term growth and prosperity. It's not vicious, it's virtuous. I nearly stepped. Said this, the world of work is evolving rapidly. Structural transformations driven by technological advancements and automation have given rise to new business models and diverse forms of employment. As I said, Arun, as we've heard quite often, many industries speak very proudly about the fact that they've been able to mechanize their production lines and so on. And they don't speak as proudly about what they're doing for the workers who have been retrenched or who have been displaced. Competing in an increasingly competitive global labor market now demands specialized skill sets and higher qualification. This is another very important challenge, skilling. This further demands for greater flexibility in the labor market, underscoring the need for adaptable policies and a workforce equipped to navigate these dynamic changes. Let me share some key data points that highlights how India, with its demographic advantage and improving labor metrics, is well positioned to meet global labor demand. According to the recent QS World Future Skills Index, India ranks 27th among 190 countries. One of the indexes where we are high, positively high. In most of the indices, we are negatively high. The index reports India standing at 37th in skill fit, 26th in academic readiness, 40th in economic transformation, and impressive second place in the future of work category, after the United States. Additionally, the index emphasizes India's strong preparedness for adopting AI, digital, and green technologies, placing it ahead of many other nations and reinforcing its potential to lead the future of work and innovation. According to the World Economic Forum, AI skills are expected to grow by 60% and digital skills by 35% by 2030. This will lead to creation of 24 million new green jobs in India. Additionally, notable trends from the periodic labor force survey show that India's unemployment rate has declined from 6% in FY 2018 to 3.2% in FY 24, while the worker population ratio rose from 46.8% to 58.2%. The workforce engaged in economic activity increased to an estimated 643.3 million in FY24, up from 471.5 million in FY15, with women's WR doubling to 40.3% and youth WPR reaching 41.7%. Furthermore, EY projects in India, EY projects, Ernst & Young, projects India to supply 24.3% of the global workforce over the next decade, positioning it as a major talent hub. Despite these impressive gains, significant challenges remain as we chart the future of work strategy for sustainable and inclusive growth. Globally, ILO reported a youth unemployment rate of 14.9% in 2022, with a substantial number of young people, particularly women, classified as not in employment, education, or training. Further, informality remains a significant challenge, accounting for over 60% of global employment. And in the global south, informality is much higher than 60%. In India, this issue is even more pronounced, with 82%, as I said, 82% of the workers engaged in the informal sector and 90% informally employed. Since 2019, real wages for regular and self-employed workers have largely stagnated or declined. In 2022, 62% of the casual agricultural laborers and 70% of construction laborers earned less than the minimum wage. Now, this is something which we can say with certainty because we found that in our own primary surveys. Structural shifts in India's labor market have slowed, with manufacturing employment stagnating at 12 to 14%, while the pandemic reversed earlier gains by pushing more workers back into agriculture or the rural sector. The services sector, particularly IT and financial services, supposedly a key source of formal well-paying jobs and quality employment opportunities, have not been able to absorb the manforce as was expected. Moreover, as per the data of recent data of India's Labour Bureau and NSSO, there is a virtual stagnation of real wages in India's informal sector over the past decade. These insights underscore the need to prioritize the following key areas. One, to promote job creation with a focus on services industry, MSMEs, and revitalizing India's manufacturing sector. Just a little while ago, while we were having coffee, Arun Mehra and others, all of us were discussing about the kind of work that was done during his leadership at the Planning Commission on a manufacturing plan, and it's how, it's a long-held aspiration to increase our manufacturing share from 15 to 25%, but we are nowhere near that at the moment. And what is it that we need to do? And therefore, Aruna Sharma rightly suggested that we should revisit that plan and try to see if we can revive it. Now, the second point, that is to enhance the quality of employment to ensure fair wages, job security, and safe working conditions. This is something which is being addressed by the labor code. The problem is, as we have seen in our own experience, it's not the law or the regulation which is relevant, it's the enforcement or the implementation which is relevant, number one, which could be both voluntary and involuntary. As I said, my own experience is that running a small sales unit, I found that we ensured that there are safety provisions followed to the letter T. And we were given the first prize by the authority to having done that. I mean, nobody bothers. In this policy sector, nobody bothers about safety. We don't bother about safety in our own households. We don't bother about safety on the roads, for example. Our consciousness is very poor. But anyway, now, thirdly, to revitalize labor market inequalities and advancing workforce formalization to improve inclusivity and social protection. Now, all this requires a lot of policy changes and then followed by implementation. Finally, strengthening skills development and active labor market policies, recognizing the continuous evolution of work driven by the fourth industrial revolution now, which is the fifth. This includes leveraging technology and adapting to the changing natures of production and employment. This is a very complex area that we are talking about. You have IR5, AI, and all the things which I don't think many of us understand the exact implications of it, except that we are also hunting in the dark for what could be possibly, but there is a lot of unpredictability. And one of the major factors of unpredictability in the global economy is the arrival of Trump as the next sort of destructive leader of the world's largest economy. That is going to have many downsides. At Cuts, through an initiative, Good and Better Jobs in India, we have challenged the misconception that worker benefits hinder profit maximization. Through actual discussions and debates and numbers, emphasizing instead that mutual gains that arise from investing in human capital development create a win-win scenario for both businesses and workers. Further, fostering sound industrial relations and promoting collaboration between workers and management are seen as essential to enhancing worker participation and engagement. We also believe advancing gender equality is fundamental to ensuring equal rights and opportunities in both life and work. Strengthening social protection measures that guarantee basic security is a critical step towards alleviating poverty and addressing vulnerability and social exclusion. In short, we are committing to achieve SDG 8, Sustainable Development Goal, which relates to decent work and economic growth. Aligned with the ILO's vision of addressing the future of work, our project Good and Better Jobs in India has focused not only on job creation, but quality employment for inclusive growth. We investigated how responsible investing can foster decent work without compromising on the profit factor, and have examined the gaps in wages, skills, and working conditions to integrate labor welfare into investment decisions, ensuring fair wages, improved working conditions, and access to continuous skill development. As many of you may be aware, this project had begun in 2018 and has been conducted into two phases, 2018 to 21 and 2021 to 24. In the second phase, we have tried to deepen our narrative by examining investment flows with a focus on ESG, social security measures with respect to different sectors, with a focus on gig economy, conditions necessary for transitioning workers into formal high-quality employment, further contributing to the narrative of economic reform too, where India is now focusing on competitiveness, inclusivity, and innovation. Interestingly, our own research in the EAC showed that most of the industry is ignorant of the S, the factor S. They are sort of so tied up and so engrossed with climate change, so environment becomes number one priority. Governance is something which they have to follow because of the law and so on. And S was, a lot of industry thought S means CSR. I said, no, it's not CSR, it's much more than CSR. So many people, many industries actually put it on their balance sheet and their website. They're doing so many CSR projects and fulfilling their social obligations. That was a little bit of nonsense, I would say. And it took time for us. Few of the sovereign funds do have it on their website, defining S correctly. But in terms of the implementation, we didn't get any response from them, so whether they actually did it. The only one that we found a good response was from the HSBC bank, where they had actually implemented S in their loaning portfolios to ensure that worker welfare was treated properly. But otherwise, no. The aim was to generate knowledge through the formulation of alternative, non-budgetary and non-legislative economic strategy based on the evidence from the field that good and better jobs in India, that facilitate good and better jobs. And my colleague Sanchita will further discuss the project objective and outcomes in detail. In conclusion, fostering industry, academia and collaboration is vital for driving research and development investments, which will also help bridge the skill gap. A more adaptable workforce and an upgraded higher education system are essential to meet future challenges. And with that, I would also add the percentage of budget that is allocated on research and development is abysmal. And it sort of affects our competitiveness in every which way, in every which sector. And that is something which we've been asking for, and government has been trying to do that. But the percentage which as of GDP is about 2.3%, which is very poor for a country, an aspirational country like India. It has to go up to at least 5%. Am I wrong, Santosh?
R&D as a proportion of GDP, it's 0.7%.
Sorry, you're right. I don't know where I got that figure, 2.3%, it was something else, some other correlation. But anyway.
That's close to what China has been for a long time.
Yeah, right. No, thank you for correcting me. Here it is worth mentioning that the rapid expanding nature of social security coverage, with over 62 million new EPFO subscribers between 2017 and 2024, and the employment-linked incentive scheme introduced in 2025 FY budget, it is a major step towards both job creation and formalizing workforce as it aims to benefit 29 million young people over the next 2 years. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi aptly said, a country achieves great success by dreaming big and setting strong resolutions. Engaging the youth in this vision is crucial, and as they are the biggest beneficiary of a vibrant, economically robust India by 2047. With their boundless capacity for innovation and fresh ideas, the youth hold the power to harness India's demographic advantage and meet the growing global demand for skilled labor. With that, let me thank you all and like to welcome our distinguished panel. Abhishek Kumar on the extreme right, Santosh Mehrotra, Arun Mehra, Aruna Sharma, Surjeet Bhalla, and Kanta Singh is expected any time now. And I particularly like to recognize Sindhushi Khullar, a former secretary in the Planning Commission with whom we worked. And we hope that we'll have a good discussion. With that, let me welcome you all once again. And she has reminded me of. So over to Sanchita.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta. Good morning to our distinguished guests, colleagues. It's very nice to have all of you here. I won't spend too much time because you see, it's a project implemented in 2 phases, 7 years of work. But I'll try to finish my presentation in 10, 15 minutes just to give you an idea of the approach that has been taken and the kind of impact or realization that has come through this approach. And also, I'll end with some food for thought. We hope to have a good discussion following my presentation. Of course, we'll start with our panel, but we hope all our other distinguished guests and experts joining. So let me start. I'm talking about Cuts work on labor and employment future of work, the kind of impact it has had, and the way forward, how we see the future. So the approach. We have argued for focusing on quality of work, not just employment numbers. It's not, we are saying that employment numbers are not important, but what we are saying is, along with employment numbers, we should also focus on quality of work. Our work has advocated for productivism approach. We are talking about ensuring economic opportunities for all, skill development, promoting firms that create good jobs, encouraging employment-friendly innovation and collaborative development between different partners, government and think tanks, industry. And you will find this approach, I mean, of course, a lot of people, a lot of economists have talked about it. But, recently, Danny Roderick, he has written about this into 2023. Rationale, why we have taken this approach? Because we believe that for achieving inclusive economic growth, we should accord primacy to worker productivity and job conditions in economic discourse. And how we can do it? We're talking about modifying existing models or developing alternate models of economic growth. So GrowJobs 1, I mean, the actual name of the project is pretty long, but this is a short form of the name. We call it GrowJobs. We call both the projects GrowJobs. So GrowJobs 1, which ran from 2018 to 2021, it undertook some groundbreaking analysis on enabling good environment to create good and better jobs. So we are talking about good jobs, but we are talking about even going beyond that, not just good jobs for all, but even better jobs for workers. And we have promoted this narrative in public discourse through events, through different outputs, through research, and advocated workers' welfare issues such as training. We have advocated that workers' welfare issues is treated as an investment by companies, not as a cost. It should be treated as investment in human resources. GrowJobs 2, which is the project which is ending now, we have analyzed firm and investor perspectives, and we've also looked at workers' perspectives. We've done this through in-depth interviews, surveys of gig workers, and the main focus has been workers' welfare, by which we mean, the kind of social protection measures that exist for them, the job conditions, their general economic conditions, going beyond, just salaries or, number of working hours. We have mainstream discussions on issues such as gig workers, then social dimension of, say, sustainable development goals, ESG, impact investment, how different investors are looking at the social aspects. And we have through different, mainly through some events, we have looked at intersectional issues such as climate change, education and skills, AI and advanced tech, gender and community development, financial inclusion. So this is just it's a snapshot of some of the findings. So there was a textile study in 2020 which found that there is high level of labor contractualization in textile firms, which ensures regular supply of labor, but it drives down labor value. Then there was a food processing study conducted in 2021, and it found that the food processing units were creating employment mainly in low-skill jobs, like sorting, grading, washing, packing, logistic services. In 2022-2023, we conducted in-depth interviews of companies. And we found that for the companies, attrition of workers is the primary concern. And we conducted a gig worker survey last year. And we found that 88% of respondents have said that even after accessing government or employer welfare schemes, they feel their economic conditions did not improve. And 60% of those gig workers say that, sorry, there's a typo, say that gig work paid more than other forms of work for them. But when we analyze the results for workers from SC/ST categories, 60% say that gig work did not pay more than other forms of work for them. So future work agenda, these are the things we are discussing, we're developing concept notes, ideas. One issue we can look at, we are thinking of looking at is regional perspective, see what's happening in Southeast Asia, South Asia, particularly for gig workers. Intersectional issues, of course, climate change, worker productivity, AI, skill development and education policy, gender and working arrangements. And also informing regulatory work such as, labor laws and social protection system, how to strengthen these or how to strengthen implementation. Some food for thought. So we are hoping to have good discussion on some of these points, but we don't have to focus only on these points. We are happy to, expand. For example, how to improve access to social protection schemes. Should companies be involved? Because we found that the awareness level of workers on the kind of government schemes applicable for them is quite low. So should companies be involved in popularizing these schemes? Then, what is the way forward for addressing challenges as well as opportunities of AI and advanced tech? Should there be more regulations or should there be more partnership between, say, government and different stakeholders? How to design an efficient skill development system to meet needs of the workforce. Then ESG and investment linked tools, like, say impact investment. Do they have a role in workers' welfare? You heard from Mr. Mehta, that awareness level is low on, social issues and not many investors are actually giving it priority, So do these things have a role? If yes, how to scale the different initiatives, scale up the different initiatives that exist? How to achieve a balanced, sustainable development by managing just transition, JETC incorporation, along with high economic growth. And lastly, would shifting geopolitics bring about a change in working arrangements in developing countries, India and other developing countries? So thank you. And
Global South. We use the word Global
yeah,
South.
Global South. So Global South, working arrangements of workers in Global South. Thank you. I'm happy to take any question or we can go to the next panel. It's Mr. Mehta who will tell us.
Thank you, Sanchita. Thank you very much. Since we already have a panel discussion, which I had preempted you, and my apologies for that, because the agenda was not very visible to me. I thought we were straight getting into the discussion. But having said that, let me begin with Aruna. The question to you, as we did send you, but let me repeat for the benefit of the audience. What legal and regulatory frameworks are currently in place to address the challenges and opportunities created by AI and emerging technologies in the world of work? The second aspect is, are these existing laws on platform work fulfilling their objectives? And the third part is, what challenges arise in their implementation and how can their effectiveness be improved? If you can keep your answer focused, I'll be very grateful.
Surely. Thank you so much. And I must compliment Guts for taking up this issue because the basic worry is that 60% of youth population, what demographic dividend we are having at a very wrong time when the world is moving towards more and more automation. So our challenge becomes much more bigger and much more difficult. And that is where it is very, very important that when we are talking about the legal and regulatory findings with us, there, our legal and regulatory findings on the protection for the labor seems to be coming in term of labor code, which is not yet ruled down. So in the sense, many of the problems of the gig workers, of their social protection, of ensuring them to have a framework, ensuring the role of the company, the contributor, and some of the stray orders are coming of the flexibility of drawing or flexibility of changing the accounts and everything, but that is more on the finance and money management kind of a thing. But their rights are still in the gray area because this is not yet rolled out. So that is one thing which is of a great worry to us. And the second thing is like unemployability and underemployment. I don't know, you gave very, very positive figures, but the numbers which I have been reading is our unemployment is to a range of 8.4, reduced little bit to 7.8 something, but not a very happy situation at all. Year on year, we are having people unemployed worst and underemployed more. So what you talked about, very right, about the quality and sustainable jobs, that is the target, and that can only come through MSME. And let me take the pandemic example. The pandemic example, the companies which worked on their employees, they had a V-curve recovery. And that has been my experience, that who did not go for retrenchment, who looked after their health care, who ensured they are being taken care of, they had a V-curve. And others went into the downward of the K-curve. So this is what has happened. So it made companies and their peer group to understand that you have to invest on your workers. You have to invest into your employees and you have to look after them at the time of distress. So that is now we have an evidence about it, a very strong evidence.
Having said this, again, to repeat my question is, in this kind of thing, what we expected you to tell us and speak about is the kind of new things that IR5 is going to throw up, AI, etc.
That's what. I'm just coming to that.
Gee.
So the bigger companies, when I mentioned pandemic, the next thing which is coming very strong is all big companies are going to go for automation. One thing that was done during pandemic, each company did an exercise as to what all the sectors which can be automated. There may not be a retrenchment, but the future employment is going to be limited. So that is going to happen. So where does the work come? Work comes from MSME, which will be automated, which has to go. And post-pandemic, they were hit the worst. I have absolutely nothing to say, because when you are talking of the corrective policies about it, moratorium, they could not take advantage of it at all because they were defaulters in a big way, and moratorium was like multiplying of interest and just pushing the payments a bit. So there was no relief. Actual relief was not there. Then second thing which happened to them is no working capital access. That NBFCs, they were not able to roll down the working capital, and banks definitely failed on that. Resultant is MSMEs closed down. If you look at the numbers, and I'm very sure my colleagues and Mr. Mehrotra especially will have the figures and the accurate numbers of number of MSMEs that closed down. So then where do you get this employment and what kind of a skilling?
That is a question which I'm going to ask.
Yes. And this is where it is going to come, and my strong recommendation always is that the skilling department, the skilling efforts or skilling thing has to get linked with MSME. दो से चार लोगों को you attach them to MSME, pay for them. So you are supporting MSME, plus you will get employable thing. Then your national education policy, it talks about the vocational education post 12. I think it should go post 10. That can really come out very, very strong. And then our policies have to be credible and consistent. When I'm talking of AI chip, now the USA is going to have a monopoly on AI chips. Therefore, research we have to do in for and support them. Like what we are doing through our incredible and inconsistent policies is, let me take example of crypto and gaming. Absolutely in gaming we can become a hub. But now by imposing GST or on startups, the angel fund, they got the income tax notice. Can you imagine that? So they said, this is your income, you better pay the income tax. With great difficulty, it was withdrawn. So these kind of a things, these young minds, how will they float? You know, how will they do the research? How will they go the innovations? They are all getting migrated out where we can create quality jobs and move towards AI. AI is now today in everybody's life. Now issue is, do we become a leader or do we become a follower into the AI? And that is what will come through consistent policies, that we have to allow this AI chip, which is a hardware part of it, and the software part of it is a very strong research. I think we missed the mark. Like Infosys and TCS also did the body shopping. You know, the question is raised by Google, Microsoft. I give a brilliant answer to it. The world follows, but I don't own anything. I'm just giving an answer. And that is where we failed in the software industry. We have to come back there. And one thing I'll just make a mention, that I don't think too much dependence on service sector is good for the country. We have to be manufacturing. China was 50% when they had demographic dividend of MSME contribution. We are 15 and struggling to become 25. So that is a problem. And then pushing wealth to the rural areas. The value addition has to be in the rural areas. I'll just give one small example before I just sum it up. Is like a simple example of mint I have seen, Pudina. So Pudina I just sold. Now you can have a decanter unit bang in the rural area where they take out menthol out of it. So value addition gets pushed there, the money gets pushed there. Easy to carry, logistics becomes easy. The company, the pharmaceutical and confectionery buys it off. And the advantage which goes into it is the wealth is again pushed. So like that, one step up additions have to push down. And automation is coming also in agriculture. So let us forget that agriculture will absorb extra labor. No way. No way. So in this way, when to sum it up, the legal and regulations are in place. We better roll it down, the labor code, which will be a protectionist social welfare measures when we are going ahead with it. This gig workers is going to be more and more of having multiple employers or shifting their employment. So one line employment is not going to be there. The biggest industries are going to get automated, creating lesser jobs. So MSME is the only answer.
Can I ask you a concluding question?
Yes, please.
How can India integrate AI ethics? I know it's a difficult question.
AI into?
AI ethics, responsible innovation and inclusivity in its labor market policies.
Not difficult at all. Because the AI, what is AI going to do?
You still have to understand the contours.
No. Let me put it this way. What is AI? AI is expanding the speed of data analysis.
Yeah.
It's nothing more than that.
Right.
Okay. So we do have robust data with us. We have very strong databases with us. The more and more analytics and using that analytics for a better policy making or better execution or better implementation. So it's more a human factor of how you read it, you know.
That's good.
So it is throwing you an answer or the problem, but I should have the ability to read it, to analyze it, and then pick up the threads and push it.
We have a capability in India.
We have lot of islands of success at different places where we have used database effectively for better targeting and better reach. We have done that. So now that has to become a habit. You know,
Thank you.
Like I strongly believe in SOPs. You know, the brains are my colleagues. You know, we are the implementers of in an effective way. Once that brain give an answer, then like an SOP, we have to put it in a drill and ensure that it reaches.
Thank you very much. We are honest brokers.
That's right. Thank you.
Having said that, let me now come to Arun. Arun, I have two questions for you. In the context of India's demographic transition, how can structural change driven by AI and digitalization be leveraged to create sustainable employment opportunities while addressing potential challenges related to job displacement, skills gap, and workforce inclusivity? Friends, you might notice that I'm looking at the future. Right? So what is going to happen in the future, and that is what I would like the wisdom around the table to be able to address some of these issues. I know, a lot of it is going to be sort of second guessing, but even second guessing would be necessary in order to move the agenda forward. Arun, over to you.
Thank you very much, Pradeep. I'm going to follow instructions
Sure.
very, very clearly within 10 minutes and answer your questions. And they're very profound questions, so I'm going to answer them my way. I was given instructions early on, thank you, that I should concentrate on AI and the questions of how AI will affect employment. I guess it's how AI is going to affect the future of the world. So let me begin. AI, firstly, thank you for allowing me to follow Aruna. I'm very impressed with the number of women that you have in your organization now. And I've been saying...
And in the audience also. We have more women now than men.
Right. So you want to include them, I hope, in the discussion too.
Of course.
I think this country is going to change if we hear the women.
If we give them more time.
First, and maybe for a long time just hear the women. And you and I should just keep quiet.
Good idea.
So anyway, you asked me to speak and I'll do my job. AI seems to be in every discussion these days, whatever it is about. Privacy, surveillance, consumer rights, climate change, incomes, jobs. And on one hand, and you asked me also to speak about AI.
Mike.
It's on? Sorry.
Ab hua.
Acha. So you didn't hear my nice private discussion with Pradeep about that we should let the women speak more, and and we men, old men, should just shut up for a while. But he asked me to speak for 10 minutes on some questions, so I'm going to be, in my way, answering those questions. I was asked to speak about AI, and like he said, also to Peter, address the questions about ethics and AI. And here it is. AI seems to be in every discussion these days, whatever it is about, privacy, surveillance, consumer rights, climate change, incomes, jobs. And on one hand, there is optimism that AI will improve the world in ways that human intelligence has not been able to. And on the other is the fear that we don't know how this so-called artificial non-human intelligence will change the world. And there are two responses to any uncertainty, to this uncertainty too, about whether the good side of AI will brighten our lives or whether its dark side will make the world less secure. And one response, typical response in formulating policy, is to predict the future outcomes for a world, in this case with more AI, and then design policies accordingly. And the other is to regulate AI beforehand, even before we agree about what outcomes it will produce, and ensure that we get more of it, whatever its good sides will be, and prevent its bad sides from destroying us. Now, accurate predictions of the future are impossible. The only thing you cannot predict is the future, as someone said. And I wanted to know who said this, so I asked ChatGPT yesterday, who did. And ChatGPT said wisely, many people have said it through history, and one cannot attribute this eternal wisdom to anyone. The question is, why is the future unpredictable? There are two reasons. One is that multiple forces interacting with each other in non-linear ways change the state of complex systems and produce outcomes that will not be visible and therefore can't be measured until the system has changed. Social, economic, environmental, and political forces will be impacted by any transformative technology, and they will in turn react to that technology and change its course. So let's just go back just a few years when this project of jobs that the Ford Foundation so wisely sponsored began. And I was at the foundation, and the Ford Foundation invited me to their office and said that, we want to do something which will have a profound impact in India on the future of work and dignity and fairness to workers. And, some research would be required. So I said, look, I'm alone. You choose the organization that will assist you or do the research and the conclusions. So I said, I trust Guts, Consumer, Unity, Trust, Society, and I worked with them. So let's have them to do it. And you've seen the report of the 7-year work today. Around that time, when this report was commissioned, the hype was about Industry 4.0. Do you recollect that? A theme that the World Economic Forum had pushed, which is convening as we speak once again. An industry of consultants grew up at that time to advise governments and corporations about Industry 4.0. And they made predictions of how jobs will be affected and what new skills will be required. And there were wide differences in their predictions. A report was prepared by CII in 2016 at the instance of Prime Minister Modi. He said this problem of India not generating enough good jobs needs a fresh thinking, and we need to see many points of view. So CI turned to me and said, would I please help to design and conduct a countrywide consultation with a variety of stakeholders around a variety of intersecting subjects, urban planning, rural development, they all affect the generation of good, fair jobs. And so a variety of people working on these subjects through the country and people representing small-scale sector and आपके union, Vijesh ji यहाँ हैं, workers and their unions also participated in this. And of course, industry lobbies, CI, after all convening it, they were all there. And so we did, to begin with, a survey of what were the predictions being made about the effect of Industry 4.0 on the creation of jobs in the future. The report, by the way, was titled The Future of Jobs. And you say, let's think about the future of jobs in India, enterprise and livelihoods, a systems view and scenarios. Imagine scenarios that will emerge if we do this and some other scenario if we do that. It noted the wide variation of estimates made by many think tanks and consultants. For example, forecasts made then in 2016 by very reputable consultancies of jobs in the Indian automotive industry sector in 2025 varied from one authoritative estimate which said 3.4 million and another said 19 million. In construction, from 9 million to 29 million. There were methodological reasons for the variations and inaccuracies. One was their non-systemic methodology. They excluded social and political forces in the system that are not easy to quantify. The other was the bias of the estimators. Firms vested in the new technologies and consultancies vested in them are biased to make positive projections because they will gain the most by their adoption. The other reason why the future spread of any technology with transformative potential cannot be predicted is how will it be regulated and by whom? Because that will determine the trajectory and who will be its beneficiaries. In other words, what will happen in the future depends on what will be done here and now and by whom. And this is a political process. Early developers of transformative technologies always want to control the proliferation to retain their own power. With AI, the world is at a nuclear moment again. 80 years after the power of nuclear energy was unleashed in Los Alamos and Hiroshima. Regulation of nuclear energy has been controlled since then by its first large producer. You asked about ethics, and she pointed rightly that it's a tool. AI is a tool. And Noel Harari, who's been pointing out the implications of AI on the future of humanity, has said recently that AI is supposed to be a tool. And like a knife, he said, whether a knife cuts salad or kills another human being is not the knife's decision. But when AI is becoming agents, you get AI agents, they are going to decide whether they will use their power to cut salad or to kill human beings.
Or stab somebody in the back.
Yeah. AI evangelists and its inventors and promoters, owners, promote its benefits in healthcare, in education, in commerce, and what have you. But others are concerned about the dark side, the loss of privacy, and the oligarchy of private companies that is controlling technology platforms, you mentioned platforms, and AI applications, who are controlling our lives and are controlling even our government's thinking here. AI is giving the most powerful even more power. And thoughtful people, hopefully here, not yet brainwashed by AI evangelists and by the world's wealthiest people, do not want to leave regulation to the consciences of the richest companies and individuals. That's the problem with ESG. Let's not take the predictions of AI's benefits, or let's take the predictions of AI's benefits by its promoters with a pinch of salt. Let's look to someone likely to be neutral. And let me say the IMF, recent estimates about the impacts of AI on jobs. The IMF takes a more systemic view and recognizes that the impacts of AI will differ in different countries depending on their economic, social, and political structures. The IMF says AI will impact only 26% of employment in India and that it will benefit 14%, that means half of the 26% of the job categories, and have a positively improve productivity and wages perhaps, and have a negative impact on the 12%, the other 12%. It's overall 26% and half and half. In other words, the overall impact of AI on jobs and incomes in India will be insignificant in the bigger scheme of things. Therefore, let's go back to the Ford Foundation question. We should be looking at the bigger picture of the Indian economy and society and not just keep dwelling on technology. And it should be clear by now that there's a deep structural problem in our economy that must be admitted and addressed. And what are the structural impediments to increase the numbers of decent jobs and increase incomes at the bottom of India's socio-economic pyramid? This was the objective of the Ford Foundation study. And another fundamental problem is the way in which policies for structural reforms are being developed. And this, my experience in the Planning Commission helped me to get on the ground deep inside. But let me return to the IMF. The IMF has examined why many governments have been forced to dilute IMF-backed structural reforms over the past decade, and even to backtrack. The IMF World Economic Outlook Report, October 2024, concludes that stakeholders are not consulted sufficiently before policies are designed because experts think that common people do not understand their own problems as well as experts do. Consultations, if any, with the common people and their representatives are pro forma and insincere. And unsurprisingly, therefore, the IMF says reforms are resisted when they are imposed on the people. We see this in our country. In conclusion, let me say that AI is marginal to India's jobs and incomes challenge, and solutions to our jobs and incomes challenge will be found by improving the process of reforms of labor and agriculture markets and urban design. Think tanks and experts cannot find the right solutions, and solutions will not be found by data analysis. So since it's a discussion, you did mention some things in your introduction, and I'm going to just it's a question of definitions also. See, you mentioned about R&D, and you had a discussion with Santosh, and some figures were mentioned about 2% of point sign. The question is, how do you define R&D? Does it just take place in that box of an R&D establishment? We have these questions about poverty. How do you define poverty before you start measuring it? Third, employment, to our present discussion. How do you define good employment before you start measuring whether there's enough or less of it? So my point again is, starting from the data analysis will not help you to understand the problem that you want to understand and to find the right structural solutions. And what is agriculture and what is manufacturing? The people who are processing the mint leaves, they may be doing it in the rural area and with an agricultural product, but that's manufacturing, isn't it?
Okay, you can come back to this in the quick Q&A session.
We will come to that. And because these two people are going to come and they have plenty of discussions and proper discussions about employment in this country through statistics. And formality, my point now is about formality. First, you have to define and say, define what reform is.
Q&A session?
No, I'm finishing and I will take it's less than 10 minutes. You haven't got your watch. You're not minding the agenda and the time. No, you are not. No, I am minding it.
Sir,
you're not.
With due respect, 10 minutes over.
I will take my last minute. And this is my conclusion. I'm saying so solutions will not be found by data analysis. Don't base any reforms on predictions for reasons I've explained. The intended beneficiaries of the structural reforms required to increase jobs and incomes are workers and farmers and not the providers of finance and technology who fund the research and reports. Don't look to experts in other countries or even only to experts in our own country. The people must be consulted honestly before the reforms are outlined. They know the system in which they live. Listen more intently and deeply to the common people here in India.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to say this. You know, there are people who want to say something, Pradeep, and they're saying it passionately. We tend to shut them off. And we may be taking more time than we should, and we shut them off. And this is really bothers me, that we are not learning how to listen to people who think differently to ourselves. Okay? We think we are superior and therefore they should not be heard. So I know you treat me with such great respect, but I'm saying we don't treat others with this respect. Thank you.
Arunjit, thank you for a very brilliant speech. But in terms of the process, you're not listening to me. You said 10 minutes and I asked you at 12th minute that look, the points which you raised are very valid. They can be addressed when we take a... And thank you for reminding us that this project actually came through Arun Mehra's intervention with the Ford Foundation when he suggested to them that this... But the theme then was something which is very important for us to recall is inequality. And therefore we looked at the worker welfare as an important sort of benchmark for inequality in this country in every which way possible. With that, may I now request Santosh?
Sure. Thank you very much. First of all, let me begin by congratulating Kalts and Sanchita in particular for working hard on these various dimensions of employment and the quality of employment. I've turned my stopwatch on, so I hope I'm able to keep to the time. I have
No, gentlemen, I think you misunderstand me.
No,
1 minute. Let me clarify this,
Okay.
because if Arun is going to continuously mention this, idea is that, look, there are so many wise people sitting around the table, number one. Number two is, even they have views and options, and you can come back to the points which you may have missed.
Surely.
This is what I was trying to tell Arun. I mean, he didn't want to understand what I'm trying to say.
Sorry for the understand.
No, because you're accusing me of not listening. You're not listening.
I think his 2 minutes are wasted.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to make 4 very quick points, which derive from what I heard both you, Mr. Mehta, and Sanchita speak about. So first, you rightly, in a sense, emphasized that the SMEs that you felt were doing really well are looking after their workers. But across the economy, what we do know is that's not really happening, unfortunately. And we have evidence of that. The first evidence of that is that real wages have not been increasing, and that's what's showing up in constrained demand and constrained consumption. Consumption has grown at much less than GDP has grown. And this is what underlies fundamentally the fact that private investment has not been increasing. Over the last 10 years, private investment has been in the region of 26 to 32%, and that's a very important reason why our growth rate over the last 10 years has averaged 5.8% per annum, as opposed to the 7.8% in the period 2004 to 14, when the investment to GDP ratio was in the region of 32 to 38%. And because investment is not rising, we have seen, or not rising fast enough to cope with the number of young people joining the labor force looking for non-farm work. So non-farm work is not increasing. What has increased is farm work. The number of workers in agriculture, it should interest you, has grown by 80 million, from 200 million to 280 million between 2020 and 2024, which is the reason, Pradeep, why the unemployment rate appears to be falling. The worker participation rate appears to be increasing, and the labor force participation rate appears to be increasing. Let us not kid ourselves that in the face of increasing workers in the numbers that I've mentioned, a complete reversal of the process that was going on for the preceding years, this is real UR reduction, this is real WPR or LFPR rise. That's my first point. My second point is this is still continuing on the looking after your workers. So first I emphasize that you can't be looking out for your workers if real wages are not increasing and if jobs are not growing. And if anything, the jobs are growing in farming. Look, I'm so glad that you brought up the issue of social security. 91% of our workforce is still informal. And 85% by our estimate, if we examine the annual survey of enterprises in the unorganized sector, 85% of all our non-farm workers are in the MSME or the unorganized sector, which is the reason why 91% of our workforce is informal, meaning it doesn't have any social insurance. Now, why is this important, and why do all of us around this room have to sort of take cognizance of this today? We should have taken cognizance of this yesterday at the very latest. But why today? Because in 15 years, our demographic dividend is ending. Most people don't seem to know this. Certainly people in government don't seem to know this, that in 2040 your dividend is ending. I could demonstrate this to you, but we don't have the time to go into that. What is the implication of that dividend ending? It means that we will have become an aging society. It means that the half of our current workforce, which is over 45, is going to be at retirement age in 15 years. If half of our workforce currently is 45 or over, then they will be at retirement or higher age then. How are we going to take care of them? Are they going to keep working without pensions until they drop dead? That's essentially that's the society we are committing ourselves to or condemning ourselves to. The second dimension of that aging phenomenon we have to keep in mind, looking after our workers, again, keeping on the same theme, Pradeep, as you wanted us, is what's going to happen to health expenditure of an aging society. I mean, we know what happens to people who are sort of in a society where the relevant age, in an aging society where the demographic dividend has ended. So we have no choice but to ensure that social insurance for the 91% of our workforce, of which only 20-odd% or less are actually regular workers. So they are in an employer-employee relationship. 58% are self-employed. That means there is no employer-employee relationship. And then another 20%, 58 plus 20, is casual workers. Dehadi mazdoor. So in that situation, you've got nearly 80% of your workforce which is not in an employer-employee relationship. I have written a whole paper on what is the design of a social insurance for that. We don't have the time to talk about it. Your third point, and I'm going to finish because I'm finishing in 8 minutes. I'm really sort of following your instructions.
Brilliant.
Skilling. Your project talks about it. It's very important, but I'm going to make 4 points extremely quickly. 1, I don't think anyone in government has even begun to understand that you first have to educate your population and your workforce before you're going to be able to skill them. I don't know if how many people in this room actually know that 62% of our current workforce of 643 million have education levels of less than 8 years. 22-odd% are illiterate, another 20-odd% have less than 5 years. You add on another 20-odd, you are at 62 who are less than 8 years. अरे अर्धशिक्षित को आप 3 महीने में स्किल नहीं कर सकते NSDC की ट्रेनिंग दे करके. This is what you are attempting to do. I'm sorry to say this. Your biggest skilling program is what? PMKVY 1, PMKVY 2, 3, 4, thousands of crores have been spent on it. You know what the placement rate of your PMKVY 1, 2, 3, 4 is? Less than 20%. Consistently on 1, 2, 3, 4, not increasing it for anyone. Second point about this skilling. Higher education, we've massified it. Because we massified schooling, we massified higher education. We went from 11% of gross enrollment ratio of the 18 to 23-year-olds to 27% by 2017-18. And now comes along the NEP and tells us कि अरे 27 से काम नहीं चलेगा, 50 ले जाना है हमें. 50% of our workforce is to be higher of our young 18 to 23-year-olds must be higher educated. You are generating unemployables on a daily basis through your massified higher education system, and you want to take this from 27% to 50%. Give me a break. Secondly, within the NEP, you also say we want to make sure that 50% of our students must have VET, technical and vocational education and training. You know what is the share today? It's 3%. And what are you doing? The latest PLF is very fascinating. I was shocked when I had to write about this about 10 days ago. I saw that the numbers of those who have formal training has suddenly shot up to by 20 percentage points in the last 2 or 3 years. Kya hua hai? I was completely baffled. I mean, for years we had, I'm finishing. I'm still. The point is, they are including those who are being RPL'd, recognition of prior learning, which you do in 1 day or 2 days. That's being called skilling. So there are many things that are wrong. Final point, STEM. When you educate such large numbers, and most of them are doing arts, commerce, law, but they're not doing STEM. What you need in secondary school is teachers who can teach STEM, because if you don't teach the students STEM, we know that STEM students are likely to be more employable. We don't have this. The college educated being taught STEM. How are you going to get the school teachers at the secondary level? Thank you very much.
I think usually what I've heard is that 5% people do not know the abbreviation, what it means. I don't know whether everybody knows what STEM is. No, there are 5% people in this world who do not even know that UN means United Nations. That's a report which has come out. But the point is science, technology, engineering, and management. Very well said. Now, what I thought Santosh could have touched upon in the Q&A session is about the issue of inequality, which is now further being debated in India as well, after Piketty visited and spoke about it. And that is what the project aims to address as an ultimate goal. That will it, if we look at workers' welfare as an issue, it is unequal. There is a lot of inequality there as well. Other than the fact that we're not talking about the underemployed and the unemployed and the informal sector and all that. They suffer in their own sort of solitude. With that, Abhishek, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta. Couple of points to begin with. Since I was someone who was leading this project while I was at CUTS, especially in the first phase, Sanchita mentioned the key takeaways, and I want to sort of belabor a couple of points which still need the strengthening of discourse, so to say. What did we learn in this project? A couple of minutes on that. What we learned is, you're right on data, but when you go from cluster to cluster, trends become more important than data. And what we learned is that oftentimes the debate was hijacked by numbers and overlooking the trends. So, and one of the biggest contribution that I think that CUTS has given in the public policy is to bring out the political economy through trend analysis, backed by numbers, but not always over-focus on numbers. So congratulations on that. The second important thing that we learned in the project is that the data which is reported on ministries on employment as per crore of investment is grossly wrong across sectors. And it is that data that is presented to Ministry of Finance for budget incentives, is presented to Commerce Ministry for whatever subventions, and is grossly wrong. At least in construction, food processing, textile. Textile, for example, says there are 45 million people who are employed. When we went, and second highest employer after agriculture, when we went and we saw it, we didn't see any meaningful employment because there is inevitable automation that's happening. Now, this employment may be in the logistics side of it, packaging side of it, but core is being displaced by machines. So there is an important need, that's the second lesson, that when we are looking at sectors, we have to open them up in a value chain and then analyze every node of that value chain from the competitiveness angle. So if it is textile and machines are basically replacing people, let it be. Because you could actually shift that employment in the same value chain on the garmenting side, which is a more dynamic side and where the skill uptake opportunities are more. Just to give an example. That's the second learning. The third learning that we understood is the political economy that drags the competitiveness downwards. When we opened up the value chain, unfortunately, this whole debate uh, about reform of labor laws was not applicable. It was not applicable because just take four factors together: raw material, technology, logistics, labor, and even power. We found distortions on almost every front. And because labor is the only subject which is under direct control of the firm, the wages are suppressed, while no questions are asked on the fixed costs, which are basically because of number of reasons, inefficiencies in the power sector or import duties, so on and so forth on the raw material. And I think time has now come to sort of raise these questions. And we wrote that letter to PMESC, and Mr. Bebroy, Dr. Bibek Debroy was there, and it was highly appreciated. Now, since we mentioned inequality, 3-4 points when we started this project, and I continue to be involved in it even after I left as in the advisory position. Inequality was there, and that informed the project rationale. But since then, it has increased. The wage growth hasn't happened as much as inequality has increased, and I think there is a correlation. And so that we need to really work on some macro aspects where we say this rate of inequality and falling of wage growth is directly proportional. And it's evident, again, a trend. Let's put it out in 3-4 statistics. A normal housemaid will take 23,000 years to meet salary of Infosys chief for 1 year. Most companies, and this came in Business Standard 3 days back, most companies will have, the normal workers will take 500 years to match the top executive's salary. 20 companies 3 years ago, and I think 17 now, corner 80% of India incorporated profits. Just to put that in scale, we come from Rajasthan. Rajasthan has about 29 lakh companies. Just 20, imagine what would we have the India incorporated per se across the country. Just 20 companies corner 80% of that profit. And this is continuing unabated. But I think what is really interesting to see since we started this debate on the demand crisis, started picking up steam I think about 10 years ago, but just ahead of this budget, 6 months ago, I'm seeing chief economic advisor raising this issue, people within the government raising this issue. So cuts has definitely contributed towards strengthening the discourse, and we must actually, despite this respondency, congratulate ourselves for putting that or contributing to that sensibility. Now, Sanchita, you started your presentation by a statement says investment in human resources. I want you to take back a couple of thoughts here. One, think of state as a competitive enterprise. Okay. What does a competitive enterprise do? It invests into areas which will help it grow faster. Our expenditure on health and education has been dismal for decades. Now the question that I'm highlighting over here is that state per se can't act as a competitive enterprise. It is the enterprise which has to sometimes think like a state in terms of its responsibilities, because its sustainability will depend upon consumers. And we need to take that point home. A couple of other points I just want to sort of highlight on AI.
2 minutes.
Yes, sir. Couple of points I want to highlight on AI. 2-3 days back, Ministry of Information Technology has come out with a AI governance report. A committee was set up, they deliberated, an AI governance report has come out. Lot of interesting intent, but nowhere in the report is a dimension of employment mentioned. Nowhere. I mean, it doesn't really even talk about, in the governance framework, what implication will AI potentially have and how to navigate on the employment side. We raised that issue, and we're still raising that issue. So, and one last point, on the ESG side, look, when the global saturation happened, and this is again based on trends, even in India, the capital started to dislocate itself from conventional assets and started moving towards green and all of those things. And there is a bit of green imperialism, even though I agree we need to move towards green. But just look at this. Again, 2 days back, Global North has extracted $30 million an hour from Global South, and yet the cost of capital for us compared to OECD is just double, which basically means at a time when you have to be investing into infrastructure upon which services will be layered, both of them will create employment in both manufacturing and services. You don't have the resources. And that's my final conclusion. And that's where I think in the gig side of it, because what is social security at the end of the day, sir? Social security is an accumulation of capital that funds infrastructure. It's a long-term capital. If the corporates in India would not participate adequately, and I see a lot of pushback there, government cannot just keep on providing corporate social security. That capital has to be contributed for the welfare of the corporate India into the gig side, if gig side is to become the norm tomorrow. So I'll end over there. Thank you.
Just one point I'll mention. This
Sure.
AI policy also, it is
Can
talking...
you use the mic?
Yeah. AI policy is also talking only about the regulation. It is not talking about the research and how we use the AI and what we do.
It's
It
very
is talking
incomplete.
of controlling.
Yeah, it's very
You don't have to
incomplete.
control AI. What you have to do is use AI. So
No,
that's a very big gap there.
Aruna and Sindhushi, my own experience of working with the government for the last 40 years is that there has been a degradation, constant degradation. And now, most of the civil servants are more interested in fringe benefits rather than their work, unfortunately. I mean, that's a fact. Having said that, so whatever we do, in spite of the best efforts we make, that look, this is how it should spell, it's not followed, it's not adopted. On the contrary, then you are challenged, as a mere ko sikha rahe ho. Anyway, Sujit, could you also the point of inequality, that was the main theme of this particular project.
Now, look, let me, I will address inequality, having worked on it a lot.
I know.
But I will address what I was asked. The whole report is on advancing future of work agenda for inclusive economic growth. Inequality comes in very much on the inclusive side.
Yeah.
But I will, just give me, I've also prepared this, and I want to stay within the limit and happy to answer. So, thank you for inviting me to talk on the job situation in India. I'm particularly grateful for this opportunity because several known experts are present here. I think we, as a profession, have reached a major fork in the road in India. Either we proceed with questionable data and questionable interpretations, or we try and perform in a manner consistent with the ambition to be Viksit Bharat by 2047. Now, the issues discussed are as presented in the summary document up for discussion. First thing that says, as highlighted in the ILO's India Employment Report 2024, approximately 82% of the workforce operates in the informal sector and nearly 90% is employed under informal conditions. This is right from the quote. Question is, what defines formal employment? So all of you have looked at it and have your opinions. What I will do is I will look at income tax data. Income tax data, details about it have been released for every year from 2011 to 2022. Hoping that the other ones will come soon. What does this employment data show? Tax data show. There are 100 million taxpayers in India. Total employment in India of those about 25 years of age are close to 500 million or 475. Agricultural income, due to our forefathers' very, very benign and forward-looking policy, agricultural income is not taxed. And I don't see too many questions raised about this rather unusual policy. You take out, what is it, that agriculture is 170 million, workers are close to 500 million, so you get about 330 million people left who are eligible taxpayers. Number of individual taxpayers above 2.5 lakhs is 100 million. Number one. Second, the number of jobs. Just think about it, 100 million, okay? We all have quotes about how, only 2% of the population, a very favorite amongst scholars. Amongst scholars is to quote the number of people as a percentage of the population. If you are looking at tax payment, you should look at the people who are eligible to pay tax, not as a percentage of the population. Okay. Now, number of jobs. I was rather shocked in this day and age to see your original thing here, background and context. And I quote from there, recent data from the CMIE sheds light on persistent labor market challenges. While the national unemployment rate declined from 8.5 to 7.8, key indicators will deeper, blah, blah, blah. These trends, combined with a sluggish employment growth, and what do we have on sluggish employment growth? An annual increase of just 0.5% between 2004-05 and 2011-12. We are in 2025. For employment, we are citing data from 2004 to 2011. It's accurate data. And I'll tell you how accurate and how shocking the data is and how completely out of sync of reality of today. Highlight ongoing structural barriers to equitable income quality job creation. Additionally, youth face significant difficulties in securing quality employment due to mismatch, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So what does the recent data show? First, another favorite of the people who look at the data, that you now look at the PLFS survey, and that has been there since 2017-18, every year. Much better than the CMI data, which incidentally, even now, shows female employment. You had correctly mentioned about how females are going to rule. I completely agree, and they are the backbone of this. The female labor force participation rate, according to the CMI data, is lower than any country in the world. Lower than Iraq, lower than Yemen. And we are citing that. I think really we are at a fork. I don't know how. And much of this has been discussed Jean Drèze has written on the CMI data, etc., to in 2025 to have CMI data on employment being cited in a formal document. Where's the Ford Foundation who's done this study?
Ford is not.
What's going on? Okay, let me continue. Now, on the PLFS data, which also many of us have used, I used, it started in 1718. This is what the ILO said on its website in November of 2023. This is absolutely unprecedented. In the model of labor force participation, the PLFS observations for 2017-18 and 2018-19 have been excluded as they appear to present limited comparability with both the previous NSS results and the newer PLFS results. Do not use 17-18 and 18-19. Even the ILO says it's garbage. An interesting coincidence. We had the same, not the PLFS, the ACS of 2017-18, which was banned by the government. In my view, a very bad ban. And I've written several documents saying that those data should be released so that the world can find out how bad that data is. So what we have now, an interesting thing for all of us interested in data, interested in analysis, interested in the truth, or whatever you think truth is, what happened with the statistical system between 17-18 and 18-19? Employment is garbage. Consumer expenditure survey is garbage. Now what does the latest job data for PLFS say? A lot of scholars have brought up, and Santosh is one of them, about, unpaid farm work, this, that, etc. The number of individuals, workers, unpaid, from surveys done from 1983 to 23-24, as a fraction of the total labor force in India, has been somewhere between 19%, 20%, which was in 1983, has now crept down to about 15%. What does the data on employment show, excluding unpaid family workers? And you had mentioned, or the report had mentioned, about 1 million jobs being created between 2004 and 2011. At the time, mind you, when we had the highest GDP growth rate ever.
Yeah.
So how many jobs have been created since 2019-20 to 23-24? That's 59 million in 4 years, or 15 million a year. How many for those above 25 years? This is for 15 and above. For those 25, above 25, 10 million jobs. Outside of farm, or outside not of farm work, outside of unpaid family work. Then we have the unemployment rate, which started off this first thing about the ILO report, etc. And that's both ILO and IHT. I just only got 2 minutes. ILO and IHT, both of them. Okay. One interesting feature about unemployment rate in India. Since 1983, the unemployment rate in India for the ages 30 and above, and I'll come soon to why I'm taking 30 and above, 30 to 64, has stayed around 1%, one of the lowest in the world. Okay? In 23-24, it's 0.6%, but that's irrelevant. 1%. And we have 14% unemployment of the youth in India. Try and look at what the rest of the world has for youth. Okay? And we are amongst the lower side, very high. So what is going on? And then, of course, we have various newspaper and other experts, international experts, IMF, and so on and so forth, about people hanging out from trains and buses, going to ask for a government job, right? They are applying. Lakhs and lakhs of people are applying. Do not make the mistake of thinking that these people who are applying for government jobs do not have jobs. The numbers don't add up. In a recent job, this is a global phenomenon about the educated workforce not finding jobs. I'll just give you one statistic, which I've given several times, etc. And in the book, The New Wealth of Nations, 2017-18. In 1993, there were 50 million new college graduates in the Western world. How many million graduates in the rest of the world? Not the developing, rest of the world, including communist Eastern Europe, etc., etc. 50 million. So there was equality. 50 million flow, new college graduates in the Western world, 50 million new college graduates in the rest of the world. Fast forward to 23-24, that 50 million in the Western world has gone up to about 60 million, 60. That 50 million in the rest of the world has gone up to close to 300 million.
Would you like to conclude?
Yes. So this is the wage of college workers for the very first time in the US, casual workers for the very first time from 2019 to now has gone up. Blue collar workers, what is called blue collar workers in the US. In India, casual workers have shown a real wage increase over the last, since 2017, 18, or 18, 19 or whatever, of around 3% a year. The college graduates or the rest of the labor force, self-employed as well as salaried people, have shown flat real wages.
Thank you.
This is, so real wage, genuine problem. And our government has taxed the hell out of the people. We have got a massive inflation tax operating. Your real wage has declined by close to 30-40%.
Inequality has got worsened.
Huh?
Inequality has got worsened.
No, and no. Okay? This is, maybe in the discussion.
Yeah,
No,
okay,
it
fine.
doesn't.
Shall we open the floor?
Inequality, since you brought up consumption inequality in India, and I'll give 2 points on inequality. First of all, world inequality in 2020, 21, 22 is at the lowest levels ever. Individual income inequality in the world. Okay. Second, consumption inequality in India has really, really improved. Okay? So those are the facts, but we can discuss that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. With that, I think, there's one thing which we see firsthand, that the women in the rural areas are fully engaged. Attending to the house, attending to the cattle, attending to the farm, etc. And it's a highly mistaken notion that women are unemployed in the rural areas. Men may be playing cards or drinking or doing what have you. This is something which we've seen firsthand. So let me, and this is a very wide impression. It is not something which is anecdotal. It's not anecdotal at all. Because the burden of running the family household rests on the woman. And particularly after the 1/3 reservation in panchayats, it has improved quite a lot, because women have felt the importance that they have in the society. I still remember in one of the Jajam meetings, carpet meetings in Rajasthan, which I often attend, we do a lot of work in the rural areas, where a woman got up and said that, look, people challenged this, in the sense that, how can women run village panchayats? She said, if we can run the household, including a drunk husband, how do you think we can't run the panchayat? An old woman in Marwari, in Chase, Marwari said this, And I was very thrilled, I was very elated hearing this kind of very bold statement coming from a woman who had been elected as a sarpanch. So I think a lot of misconceptions need to be cleared about this. Of course, what is happening is underemployment is certainly a very big thing. Rural non-farm employment is expanding. That was something which even Santosh spoke about. And that is something which we need to focus on, and how do we improve that quality would again then be a challenge, because of the fact is that they are in the rural areas where any kind of supervision or inspection or enforcement is poorer than in the urban areas. It's not very easy, and who will be doing it? Secondly, of course, the governance deficit in our enforcement system is only expanding, which is the other problem, that whatever laws, regulations you do, you only create more barriers rather than help the process to do that. With that, let me open the floor for questions. And I think most of you know who the distinguished panelists are. But let me again tell you, Sujit Bhalla used to be he's one of our leading economists. And he used to be, the last position he held was Executive Director of India to the IMF. He comes with Aruna Sharma. Beg your pardon. My wife is also Aruna, by the way. She retired as Secretary to Government of India and the Ministry of Steel, where she's a polymath and our distinguished fellow as well. Arun Mehra has been my mentor and guide and so on, and so therefore I can afford to take liberties with him also. He was chairman of the Boston Consulting Group, before which Prime Minister Manmohan Singh recruited him into the Planning Commission to reform it. That didn't happen, alas, for whatever reasons. Santosh Mehrotra is a very distinguished labor economist and has been in the Planning Commission and been otherwise for a long time. Abhishek Kumar is one of my very dear friends. He was working with Cuts when this project was launched, and therefore he could speak with some experience on the first phase, at least, the kind of thing. I'd also like to recognize Amar Patnaik, former Member of Parliament, who's joined us late. Another very excellent guide and through our work that we do. With that, let me open the floor, and please identify yourself. You could ask questions and no statements. I mean, if you wish to make a very particular sharp comment, please make it sharp. Please.
Hi, I'm Prakash from OMI Foundation. We are a think tank that works in the future of work, especially the gig and platform economy. My question to any of the panelists can answer is the problem of social protection in the gig and platform economies are well identified in the discussion. My question is, what is the sort of solution to this? One is the formalized, the informal have been the approach, but that seems to be a little untenable, considering because the cost of job creation increases. Then the new approaches are, as mentioned in the table, are the Rajasthan and Karnataka bills and acts that have been recently mentioned about the creation of the welfare boards. Now, in the past, we have seen with the building and construction welfare boards that thousands of crores of money being unused to distribute to the workers as social protection. Now, according to you, how tenable is this approach now with these gig and platform workers, the similar welfare board? If not this, then what is the correct approach?
Thank you. I will take 3 or 4 questions and then turn to the panel. Please, Rajeshi, please identify yourself.
I am Brajesh Upadhyay from Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh. I am heading a think tank of Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, that is Dattopan Thengdi Foundation. Thank you. Almost my concern or question is emerging from food for thought given by Sanchita ji. So that emerge from there. Basically, the data given by all the learned panelists, कोई dispute नहीं उस पर, authority है. I have been continuously reading Bhalla Saab, Santosh Malhotra ji, Arun ji. So my question is, what is the action plan? Action plan means I'm looking three set of labors. One, self-employed. Santosh Malhotra ji told 56 or some. My estimation is it is around 80% or so, 76% something. तो डेटा पर मुझे कोई डिस्प्यूट नहीं है. एंड informal workers are workers on contract or casual in the organized sector, and the third group is the very smallest worker in wage structure. So can we have a uniform policy to address all three set of the workers? And since last 44 years I am here, what I could understood, we are unable to address the segment even after having complete diagnosis. We are trying to give a general treatment. That's why issues are not getting to solution. One. Second one is, in policy making, what I could understood by the deliberations, academics, think tanks, they are doing a really appreciable job. It is all my appreciation. But equally, we are unable to push these outcomes into policy making. So what is missing? And what components are responsible or important to get combined for pushing in policy making until it is missing? I think frequently I have been discussing with Arunji and Santoshji until think tank, academia and frontal activists are not synced together, it is difficult. So what strategy can be to address this one? And lastly, the third one is the context of India. It has its own characteristic. So can we have something, the diagnosis, the presentation, really it is a close fact of the hard fact of the ground. So can we have the policy close to this outcome, are always bringing issues, what ILO says, what Japan says, what Germany said, what China says. Day before yesterday, I read the article of Arunji, China and Vietnam. So geopolitics and the social fabric of all such is not the same. So these three questions just to take as a way forward. One, what means the different three categories of workers can putting all together is the only solution, or addressing as per their segment. One. Second, policy making, think tanks or in the activists, why why they are not coming together to push policy making? Because the efforts of in isolation has gone in vain so far in these days, what I could say. And the third last one, can we have country specific what we could brought by this research district? So these are the three concerns I am trying to. Thank you, sir.
ब्रजेश जी, आपने जो आखिरी जो बात कही, ये ऐसी जो गोष्ठियां करते हैं, इससे कोशिश ये है कि पॉलिसी पे प्रभाव पड़े और इसका जो भी निष्कर्ष आता है वो संबंधित अफसरों को भेजा जाता है. और मैंने जैसा आपको बताया कि कुछ मेरा जो अनुभव है इतने सालों से, इसका जो असर है कम होते जा रहा है क्योंकि अब्जॉर्प्शन कैपेसिटी रिड्यूस हो रही है. Kanta Singh, our last speaker is here. Not at all. Can we take some more questions? Can we have some lady, just a minute. We have not heard any lady raise a question. Yeah, yes, please. Please identify yourself.
I'm Puram Mukherjee from the Population Foundation.
Can you put on the mic, please?
I'm Poonam Mutreja from the Population Foundation
Hi,
of
Poonam.
India. Thank you very much for organizing this meeting and sharing your research. I have a provocative question, and the provocative question is, I want to request the other speakers to respond to Mr. Bhalla. Mr. Bhalla has a lot of disagreements with your views. And not only today, but even otherwise, when I hear Mr. Bhalla, who I hear very carefully, so the major disagreements on the data and so on. And second, two comments, if I may make. What is it's not just the receptibility of the government, but it's the priority of the government. If the government spends so much time dealing with arguing on data, defending its data, and working on issues perhaps that are not very helpful from our population, the very fast changing population dynamics is about the aging, the young, the small window of opportunity. The small window also, we can do so much. I don't believe that this government is not capable of doing what it sets out to do. So I'm not raising a capability issue. I'm raising an issue of priority and is inequality. How do we deal with inequality? Do we go on giving rations, or do we create good jobs? Do we create, one of you very rightly mentioned, I think, Santosh, about the education. How can you have an uneducated, productive workforce or skilling in 3 months? I'm thinking of anemia and malnutrition. I mean, that is one reason our workforce, even those who are in the workforce, especially from the underprivileged background, we need to do this in a mission mode if we are to believe Santosh, which I do. But Santosh, in some states, we have more than the years you mentioned for the demographic dividend. We are at different stages. Yeah, so UP, North, Bihar have a longer period of time, but I'm not getting into a debate with you. So, and then finally, I hear your concern, Mr. Mehta, about the receptivity and the government. Perhaps we in the social sector and in think tanks, one is collective. We're all like frogs jumping in different directions, which the NGOs have always been, but the think tanks can do better, and the thought leaders can do better than we have done as NGOs. And I do believe there are ways to push the needle with the government. Perhaps we have to work differently. We don't have to crawl and bend, but we can have a dialogue, a more constructive, and perhaps that's something with, Surjit, others of you sitting here, could perhaps spread some light on how we can constructively ensure how the government, government is more receptive. I don't believe government is anti-people. So how do we work with the government?
No, my point was different. I'm not saying that government is not receptive. I'm saying the absorption
I'm
capacity.
not saying...
Madam, 1 minute. Absorption capacity is reducing. This is what is my own very considered opinion. Having said that, may I turn to Sujit? If you would like to respond to Poonam.
May I just may I just 1 second? Okay, the question she has raised and Brijesh raised is about the nature of the dialogue and the process and the quality of the dialogue. So yes, there seems to be obviously some difference of opinion about statistics between Sujit and Santosh. Yeah, and so if we are going to let them debate, they'll throw more statistics at it, and I don't think we're going to go anywhere. I think we should reflect about how, to your point, can we get the priorities of our country right? And in that, I would say, the government is disjointed in its ministries and they got their priorities. And my experience was civil society, each advocates its own cause. And they're not thinking collectively about the whole. Someone wants this thing and keeps appealing that this is the problem. Unless you gave your budget to education of 10%, the country won't improve. And someone else says, well, you have to give for urban services some 10%. and the government tax collector and payer says, you know, I got 100. You tell me amongst yourselves what comes first at this point, and then how we are also going to deal with the others simultaneously. It can't be one solution. So, Pradeep, it was a matter of how you understand a complex system and foresee that if I do too much of this now, like we did for skilling, 500 people, million people, Dilip is here or not, must be skilled. Yeah, then the skilled people are getting unemployed. Okay, so the point comes, the economy is not generating enough jobs which either not for education, even the skilling is not, you know, they get aspirations and they're frustrated. So this is therefore to think about the dialogue here, and I would just make the comment. Sujit did say, because you asked him before he answers, you know, he said that, you know, the data is garbage. Right? And therefore, the point is, we shouldn't be looking at data to come to our analysis or our solution. And yet, Sujit did quote data, 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 all over. It was a torrent of data. So the question comes is, he chooses that data, maybe Santosh chooses another. And I'm just reminded of Peter Drucker, the greatest consultant and thinker, management thinker of the last century. And he was consulted by presidents of countries in Europe and the United States, as well as by the CEOs of the largest multinationals in the world. And he would always say, look, I have an hour, you know, we're going to meet for an hour. The other person would give only an hour. And he said, I'd always ask the person for their opinion first in the first 5 minutes. Because any smart person can find the facts to suit their opinion. So let's not discuss facts. Yeah. We think data are facts. They are not facts. They are data. Okay, so don't even ask them for the facts, ask what your opinion, what do you believe in. So it's a matter of political economy, which is a point about priorities.
I think one
sentence.
1 minute.
I have a couple of questions here.
Yeah, just a minute. Abhishek made the right point that we're not looking at data, we're looking at trends in order to understand as to what is happening. I think we tend to ignore that, Arun. Please.
May I just say one sentence?
Yeah, go ahead. Just a minute.
In response to Brajesh ji and Poonam, that, you know, there are differences of opinion.
And we're keeping Arun's caveat in mind.
I'm addressing precisely his caveats.
No numbers.
He and I have worked together for many years in the Planning Commission, so we actually think alike quite a lot. Let me just say in one sentence that at the end, give the two of us 5 minutes right at the end. Don't allow this discussion to be hijacked by either of us.
Okay.
By the numbers and the differences of opinion, because his opinion is not going to change and mine is certainly not changing.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's take another question.
So I'm Abhishek Sinha from a for-profit organization called Eco India Financial Services. Since last close to 18 years, we have been in financial inclusion. And we end up working with a lot of these gig workers, few hundreds of thousands, practically on a daily basis. One very big observation, and I don't have data, I have anecdotes, is that when we speak with them, the real problem for them is their next income or the gap in the income. And so when we address things like कि आपके पास APY है कि नहीं, या जीवन ज्योति बीमा है कि नहीं, या स्वास्थ्य बीमा योजना है कि नहीं, they are saying, पहले तो there is just no awareness. Secondly, there is also a lot of reluctance to solve for this what-if situation because they are really currently dealing with their current gap in income itself. And so, how are policymakers thinking about this, where even the awareness is missing? Secondly, you know, and companies like Echo or even large companies which employ gig workers, not really employ, but on a contractual basis, can the government push for policies where it ensures that the private players who employ them eventually get some of these enrollments done for such people? It is not done now. Also, I want to make this point that these gig workers absolutely enjoy the democratization, that there is no boss, and when I want to work, I switch on the app, and when I don't want to work, I just switch it off. That's my first question. The second question is, talking to the same people. We work with a lot of these chota retail shops across the country. There was some discussion around taxpayers. Now, we encourage them to sign up with GST, file for the GST such that their input doesn't go waste and so on. One constant feedback which we get is the cost of becoming part of the system. One slightly elder person, probably in their 50s, mentioned that Saral is no longer Saral. अब उनको चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट के पास जाना पड़ता है. And so how are we addressing this? There is nobody, they're quite honest in saying that ऐसा नहीं कि वो सिस्टम के पार्ट नहीं बनना चाहते हैं, but they're definitely saying कि cost of becoming part of the system is very high. अब वो छोटे छोटे अमाउंट्स के लिए उनको नोटिसेस आ जाते हैं, and they end up then consulting us or somebody else in the system, which mostly comes at a cost. So I just want to address these are a couple of questions.
No, thank you very much, Abhishek. This just reminds me of what happened in my home state, Jaisalmer, the other day, where the GST Council met. And what came out from there was something very, very, very humorous about the tax rates on popcorn. Can you imagine the finance minister is busy with the tax rates on popcorn? And can the retailer distinguish?
Sugar content versus
No, can you imagine the popcorn vendor knowing the difference between caramelized and salted and unsalted, 5%, 18% and 28%? I mean, the whole GST thing has been an absolute mess. When we launched GST, we agreed to have just 2 bands. And it ended up with 4 bands, and even within those 4 bands, it's just terrible, terrible. I was just giving an example of how good policies get astray. They get into, and that is what you were talking about. I know so many vendors who have a problem with managing GST.
Yeah, and I think the cost of becoming part of
And then, no, Abhishek, and then what happens is in the government, with due respect, is then you create discretionary nodes which then extract money. It's a universal thing. I mean, why can't we call a spade a spade? I can't understand. Abhishek.
Thank you, sir. A very quick remark. I don't see any contradiction, Mr. Mehta. I don't particularly see any contradiction with Mr. Bhala is saying and what Mr. Malhotra is saying. My only question is, no, sir, yeah. My only question is, no. One has to, again, coming back to trends. Is it good enough? Is the question. Yes. Is that consumption good enough? I mean, just look at last 3-4 years budget. What is happening? Public expenditure is increasing year on year and private investment is not happening. I mean, basics are very clear. If there is asset utilization, which is dependent upon demand, asset monetization is not picking up. That means consumption is not really enough. And that correlates to the question of incomes. Now, I want to just say one thing very interesting, because I think since we are at that stage, we need to work a little bit more and perhaps use technology, since you also asked. I'll give a small example of informality. Domestic workers, right? They are workers, but they're not recognized as such, right? When we were working in Rajasthan on one of the policies on urban informality and how to manage it, we put together a framework called Recognize, Secure and Grow. Here's a very interesting thing. 100 units of electricity was provided free. Now, that's also going to help you in getting some additional savings. Is it reaching the domestic workers? When we went on the ground, there's a landlord who is basically cornering that, still charging those domestic workers 9 rupees a unit. So what I'm trying to say, there is a lot of granular work that needs to be done when you say freebies and everything, because ultimately it is to improve consumption. Even if it is marginal, it's going to help.
Abhishek, you need to do a million things.
Yes. So what I'm trying to say, these are use cases on informality, these are use cases. And the last point, sir, on the SDG side of it, I mean, tell me, we say SDG financing, every single penny is going into SDG. The entire public finance is into SDG. You name a thing, but SDG doesn't cover. It's there. Outcomes are not happening, and that's a question that we need to ask.
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce Kanta Singh from UN Women, who is late. She's one of the panelists. Kanta, about 5 minutes to you?
Yes, sir, not more than that.
Not more than that. Thank you.
I'm really sorry.
You put on the mic, please.
We had a meeting and I couldn't come out of that, and so sorry about that. But I will talk only about women. But before I do that, Poonamji, congratulations, he's got a big award, and yes, and very recently. I have not worked on anything else other than with women, always. So I would, whatever I'll share will be.
Go ahead, please come to the
yes,
point.
Sir. Yes, sir. I'll go to budgets first because that was the last conversation. We have been working with the government on gender responsive budgeting. And you will see, all of us who are observing budgets, the percentage for women has been going up because the political understanding is that women are bigger voters for political parties, and anybody who has addressed their concerns, and not really in terms of empowerment, but the money in the hands of women, which is not bad, but then it is not leading to, in the beginning at least, to real empowerment, or you skill them in a way that they start earning their own money. But a lot of money is flowing to women-related programs, schemes, and also in their hands directly. We have to acknowledge that. So for last year, from 5%, the budget went to 6.8% in terms of gender-responsive budgeting. How, why, we can debate, and we can say this is right and this
What is the
not.
correlation with women workers?
I will tell you what. Because any money that goes towards women's schemes does two things. Either it makes their lives slightly comfortable, that they can send their children to school, for example, and they can go to work. Or they can pay for services that they need at their end to deal with their own crisis that happens. Some women who are in crisis situation themselves can move out of the situation because some basics have been covered. It does many things. Also, government has been concerned, and I'm not speaking for the government here, I have seen, because I work with them closely now, in Niti Aayog to Ministry of Women and Child Development and any other ministry, that it's not always the intent problem. Sometimes it is also they don't have a workable solution to address a problem. And we have, as women's movement, we have failed the government as well, because we never went with one demand. What Arun sir was talking about, any group which is working on a disability will only talk about disability. Any group which is working on sexual and gender rights will only talk about that. We never came together to say, okay, for year 2025, this is one demand that we want the government to do. Violence, for example, is a major crisis this country is heading towards. And different kinds of violence at home, in public spaces, also in the cyberspace. On one hand, we want young girls to go online, enable themselves to handle technology. We are not preparing them, or we are not safeguarding them towards the violence they face on a daily basis and how it hampers their lives throughout. The trauma they face by stalking and trolling and all kinds of things. Even public leaders, women leaders, anybody in public life, any woman knows what it means. And men don't even know about that what they're causing, what kind of harm they are causing to their psyche. And how it discourages one woman dropping out of public life because of this violence, physical or online, it discourages 10 women to enter public life. So not having enough women in parliament is not just a matter of coincidence. There's a systematic exclusion of that we are not addressing the entire problems in the loop. We are addressing one problem, leaving 5 behind. We are addressing 4 and leaving 2 behind. So that is one. As far as data is concerned on women's employment and women's work, I don't know what to believe, because I'm sorry to say.
We have all agreed that we can't rely on data.
Also, because if you torture it.
Don't say we all agree.
Pradeep ji, I am saying.
Data differs, no?
Data differ? No. Okay. But
sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
I am saying, but we also need to agree that if you torture data enough, it will confess to anything. Right? But there is also a scientific way of taking data. Women, and as Abhishek was saying, not that women are not working. they are not counted as workers. What do you consider work? There's no clear definition of work in the country, and we need that. Then probably 80% of the women will be working. Whether informal, formal, how much they are being paid could be done. I also wanted to talk about workplaces, which are definitely not safe for women. We haven't designed our workspaces and our work managers to handle women. And middle managers are the biggest roadblock. And what you were saying, I completely agree. Women don't just need finance. Women also need hand-holding support to take them through tax issues, take them through those problems of checks, also taking to them a court or any legal problem. They need additional support. And I'm sorry they don't trust all the men with the money because they have very little, they have no scope to fail. If a woman fails once, there's no way she can start her business again, even if it's a small business. If a man fails, he becomes a serial entrepreneur, right? So, because he'll start second, he'll start third. Family is also behind him. Women have no support system around them to start businesses or go to work. One incident happens in a bus with a young girl, 5 other girls drop out. A boy continues to go there. So workspaces will have to be designed to accommodate more women, and this is a national need. Why do we take this as a welfare approach and not bring women as a talent pool rather than considering them as an additional demanded thing? And my last point would be on flexibility at workplace, and somebody said gig workers really love that. Women definitely love it because the care work is still assigned to them. Nobody has taken away that work from them to leave them free like men are saying. The whole family is putting their effort behind to get the man ready to go to work. A woman has to put that effort and also effort to get ready and go and reach in time. So those problems really, really exist. And the very last thought is on technology, that we have a chance now. Not every worker, man or woman, is doing the back-breaking work. Technology is here, like in front of us, and AI is everywhere. If we can address some of the biases that technology bring and enable access to girls, it could be a great leveler for them. And that is what we need to focus on, and that is where the money should go. Private sector definitely is not putting money where their intent is. They want workers, women workers, but they're not creating any support system around women to bring more women at workplace. That's how 40% women join technology companies in the beginning. There are 5% who reach the top because they are not supporting them at workplace. They are not supporting them in terms of mobility. They are not supporting them in terms of creating an environment. And that's what we need to bring the focus on. Government can provide some employment. Major employment is coming from private sector. And the only 2% of VC funding is going for women's businesses. Government can spend as much as they want, but they will not be able to solve the problem alone. They can bring policies. If they are not adhered to, what can you do? So private sector has to pitch in here now and in a big way, not just through CSR, but many other ways. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Before you came, I had mentioned my own experiences that, majority of the women work in the villages. It's not counted, unfortunately. We ourselves are running about 1,500 women SHGs in southern Rajasthan, and we found that many of them have been doing very well. I mean, I can tell you anecdotal stories, but I'll not, waste the time of the audience here, except to say that there is a high potential if you are able to, channel the energy there, and then the money goes to them. Sindhushi.
Yes. Thank you, Pradeep. Please pardon me if I'm a little bit fuzzy about what I'm saying. I've been parachuted here thanks to your kind invitation. And I have stood outside on the fringes for some years now. I also claim that I am representing a number of strands here. I'm representing the future. I'm the aged or the aging part of the population. I am also someone who can speak for being on the other side, where supposedly we have failed and failed. Is it an issue for gig workers? Is it an issue for textile workers? Is it an issue for hospitality? The point across all this is that ultimately I am a consumer of these poor services, if I may say so, now. At one point, but if I cannot demand more given what they have. I want to ask this question, is there a lack of instruments for addressing their needs for loosely worded security, their health care, their pensions and bima? They will not go to government because it means accessing some anonymous website or an anonymous human being in a bank who doesn't look at them. So you will have people who do not wish to think about pensions because given the nature of their work, whether it's a domestic worker or whether it's a gig worker or a textile worker at some level of the food chain or a hospitality industry, they are not capable of thinking 20 years ahead if they are 40, let's say. And so as someone remarked over here, unless we presume that they're all going to work till they drop dead, where is the means? And this is where I think the disconnect within government exists. Government design schemes, government will throw out some, whatever you might call it, measures, and we'll see some of them very soon in next week in the budget. But the question is, are they really addressing the problem? So my issue here before the panelists is, I respect the data, I consume the data which has all been seen, and I'm equally confused about all of it, doesn't matter. But I see the reality around me. And I'm asking 15 people who I might encounter personally as gig workers or whatever they are, whatever you may call them, beginning from the domestics. As to pension का क्या कर रहे हो? अगर बीमार हो जाओगे तो very simple. You are the employer. आप हो ना? That's the answer. Is that what we are looking at? So I'm looking at the entire room, that how do we craft these instruments? They may not be accepted, they may not become schemes. And the private sector is spectacularly not equipped, or this is not their job. And the government, when they do it, it doesn't meet their own so-called target audience. So where are we? This is a question I'm asking only three important things. There is a Bima Yojana, there is an accident insurance, there is a pension Yojana. I think they've all got names. I'm sorry, I can't keep up with their current names. And so my point is that, but all of them, if no one has as yet publicly examined how are they being received.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to make
Can I?
So the quick comments I want to make, there was an issue about construction welfare board versus a similar thing for gig. So let me tell you, using IT, now construction labor board, the funds are directly linked to the household databases. So they get the maternity benefits, they get they get the wages during the maternity, they get maternity link, directly it goes into their account. So gig workers, it is going to work if systematically we link to the household data. Otherwise, it's not going to work at all. So you have to use the technology and use this money which is coming, and that's what you must have seen over the last couple of years. Many of the states, the flow and usage of funds have increased. So you can have a look at that. Another thing I want to make a mention, what ma'am also rightly mentioned, the holistic approach. Break the silos. Sector, objective, and then break it and then move towards it. And we have islands of successes. So let that island become the way it is to be. And there was about, difference in wages. China, I'll tell you, I was really amazed when, in fact, they contacted me through UNICEF on this common household databases, that how you make it. You know what their objective is? They said rich will become richer. The income of the lower lot, we want to increase it here. So how do we target them? So they wanted that data methodology for databases. So that is what the government has to do. This nobody else can do it. And I strongly believe access to health and education is a business of government. Nobody else. It has to be, like we are all outcome of that. My grandfather studied, I think during pre-British, it was municipal schools which came up. Then I am a public sector school person. So we all had an affordable levels of education, and which is now we are hitting haves and have-nots. So I think this is what I want to say it very, very clearly when we are working on these.
Thank you very much. And I said this, I
Good.
got
You had
this
years
appointment
for
after
it.
6 months of effort. So
And your question, how can we make sure that these funds are utilized. So one thing the gig workers faced regarding these government schemes is they were not eligible to apply for these schemes, or many of them thought they are not eligible because they are not employees. They're treated as independent contractors, and this is not the thing about India. This is a worldwide thing, that gig workers are treated as independent contractors, so that's why they cannot get many of these employment benefits. And that is also the employer side of the story, why gig workers are not eligible for, say, pensions or health insurance. Some companies say that they do give, but it's not uniform. And when you talk to gig workers, generally they say they do not get any benefits either from government or from their companies, their employers. Also, awareness level is very low. Even when they can access some scheme, they are not aware how to access the scheme. Very few people know about the government portals. So, this is one side of the story. And the other thing about the gig workers, what you said, a lot of studies have shown that gig workers like this freedom, but also our study and some other studies have shown that what they do not like is the instability. What they do not like is that anytime algorithm can change, and they find that their earnings have come down. And also it's very competitive, more and more gig workers are coming into the fold, and then, for them, the picture, for many of them, the picture is really not very clear, what they would. A lot of them think it's not their future, they're just doing it for the time being.
They have very little understanding of how to deal with the what-ifs, because they are very young demographic. They still don't have the foresight or the experience to think that what if the income reduces, what if my bike is under repair for a week, 10 days, kind of thing, and they don't have effective solutions for these.
Yeah. Okay. So, You?
नमस्कार मेरा नाम मनोज है और मैं हमसफर ट्रस्ट से हूँ जो जेंडर बेस्ड इश्यूज़ के लिए काम करते हैं। तो मेरे शायद सवाल कुछ जो भी डिस्कशन हो रहा हो सकता है उससे डिफरेंट होंगे, बट येस कि क्योंकि पूरे रूम के अंदर मैं जब पहले भी मीटिंग अटेंड करता तो मेरा हमेशा एक होता है, तो एक है कि इनइक्वालिटी, हॉलिस्टिक, जेंडर बेस्ड सपोर्ट एंड अप्रोच हमेशा रहता है और जो कभी दिखता नहीं है। अगर मैं आप बात करूंगा ट्रांसजेंडर पर्सन प्रोटेक्शन राइट ऑफ एक्ट जो 2019 में पास हुआ, अगर मैं अभी भी बात करता हूँ तो यहाँ पर अगर हम डिस्कशन कर रहे हैं तो इट्स ओनली गोइंग लाइक अ मेल एंड फीमेल, नॉट गोइंग बियॉन्ड दैट, बिकॉज हमारे जो ट्रांसजेंडर प्रोटेक्शन के लिए 2019 में आ चुका, आज हम 25 में पहुंच चुके हैं, लेकिन उसके बारे में कोई बात करना स्टार्ट नहीं है। तो कहीं ना कहीं उस चीज के बारे में एक सोचना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। दूसरा है कि हम एक अपर लेवल पे बात कर रहे हैं, थिंक टैंक एक रूम के अंदर हम बात कर रहे हैं, बट चेंजेस जो एक इफेक्टिव होता है कि जब हम ग्राउंड पे काम करते हैं तो हमेशा, क्योंकि हम ट्रांसजेंडर के साथ काम करते हैं, अभी एग्जांपल बात ये आती है कि उनको गवर्नमेंट कहते हैं कि हमने जॉब उनको दे रहे हैं, बट क्या वो क्वालिफाइड हैं, क्या वो उनके पास एजुकेशन सिस्टम है। अभी एजुकेशन सिस्टम की बात करें, अभी मैम ने कहा कि जैसे कि मैं कैपेबल हूं कि मैं एक अच्छे स्कूल में पढ़कर मैं एक अच्छे स्कूल में जा करके अपनी एजुकेशन को मैं कंप्लीट करता हूं एंड देन फिर मैं काम करता हूं। बट जो गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स हैं, क्या हमने उनको इस तरीके से डिजाइन किया है, क्या हम वो एक स्कूल एजुकेशन को इस तरीके से हमने किया कि वो जो पढ़ रहा है उसको कोई एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलम एक्टिविटी या एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलम उसको, जैसे सपोज एग्जाम्पल कोई उसको स्किल कोर्सेज नहीं करना पड़े और डायरेक्टली उसी सिस्टम के थ्रू वो जॉब प्लेसमेंट होता है, वो कभी भी पॉसिबल नहीं है कि +2 किया उसके बावजूद उसको कुछ ना कुछ अलग से करना पड़ेगा तभी जाकर के वो काउंटेड होगा। तो वो भी हमारे सिस्टम में कहीं ना कहीं हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि स्कूल एजुकेशन में क्या हमारा चेंजेस होगा कि जिसके हिसाब से हम उसको देख पाए कि अगर कोई करता है, क्योंकि एक तरफ तो हमारे पास वो पैसा नहीं है कि कम्युनिटी के पास या जो भी वहां पढ़ रहा है तो वो एक वो एफर्ट कर रहा है, देन उसके बाद फिर वो एक्स्ट्रा एफर्ट उसके पास नहीं होता, तो देन अगेन जो एम्प्लॉयमेंट है और जो सारी चीजें हैं वो खड़ी हो जाती हैं। एंड द लास्ट है कि जो हमें आता है ब्रेन ड्रेन। आई थिंक इसके बारे में अगर हम बात करें कि हमारे यहाँ पर फॉर एग्जांपल कि अगर जो कैपेबल हैं जो पढ़ रहे हैं आईआईएम आईआईटी एम्स यहाँ से पढ़ने के बाद उनके पास यहाँ पर क्योंकि वो पैसा और वो अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं है तो वो कहीं ना कहीं हमारा जो रिसोर्सेज है वो आउट ऑफ कंट्री वो इस्तेमाल हो रहा है। तो मैक्सिमम क्या है कि हमें ये देखना पड़ेगा कि जो रिसोर्सेज हैं वो किस तरीके से हमारे इस तरीके के साइकिल में चलें कि जो हमारा ब्रेन ड्रेन ना हो। क्योंकि मैक्सिमम अगर मैं देखूंगा तो क्या आता है कि गूगल ने इतना करोड़ में हायर किया है, क्या वो इस्तेमाल इंडिया में नहीं हो सकता वो पर्सन? क्या उसको प्लेसमेंट यहां पर नहीं मिल सकता? तो अगेन हमें ये इंपॉर्टेंटली ये देखना पड़ेगा कि कहां पर गैप ये स्टार्टिंग से है। तो स्कूल एजुकेशन के लेवल पे अगर ये होता है वो एंड हॉलिस्टिक अप्रोच की जब हम बात करते हैं तो हॉलिस्टिक अप्रोच शुड बी बाय एनी जेंडर रेस कास्ट एनीथिंग, तो वहां से होना चाहिए। थैंक यू।
Thank you.
Thank you all the plenary speakers.
Maybe if you can speak because it's being recorded.
Thank you. Thank you to listen to every one of you. It's a great learning experience, very insightful. My name is Varu Naga. I'm working with AlveoFit as VP looking into public health. We're into health tech space. And we are one of the young pioneers in developing a connected respiratory platform in the country. It's an indigenous product and we are trying to do well. My question is to Abhishek Kumar and Ma'am Aruna Sharma. It's a general question. What is India thinking? And how can India strike a balance between leveraging the power of AI and ML to enhance the productivity and innovation while ensuring that it doesn't lead to widespread unemployment further and deepening the economic instability and inequality?
I think we will take one more question. There was one more question. Somebody else? Yes, please. Can you move forward? You can come here, maybe.
थैंक यू सो मच। मैं सुबह से सुन रही थी बट क्योंकि मेरी इंग्लिश इतनी अच्छी नहीं है तो मैं बहुत ऐसे कम मेरा नाम सुनीता है, सुनीता प्रजापति। मैं चंबल मीडिया से हूँ और हमारे एक ऑनलाइन वर्टिकल है जहाँ पर हम महिलाओं को रूरल में ऑनलाइन मोबाइल जर्नलिज्म कोर्स सिखाते हैं लड़कियों को। तो जैसे अभी बात कर रहे थे कि जो हमारा स्कूल है, जो हमारा एजुकेशन है, वहां पर एक बहुत बड़ी बात आती है लैंग्वेज की। अगर हम इतने सारी लोग हैं और अगर हम किसी को अपनी ही कंपनी में हायर करते हैं या हम जॉब की बात करते हैं तो सबसे पहले हम एक बड़े अक्षर में डाल देते हैं कि आपकी लैंग्वेज क्या है। तो क्या हमें उस पर नहीं ध्यान देना चाहिए? क्या हमें उस पर नहीं बात करना चाहिए कि हम जा तो रूरल में रहे हैं बट हमारी जो लैंग्वेज है, हमारी जो बातचीत है वो क्या है? यहाँ पर सुबह से चर्चा हो रही है, किसी ने हिंदी में बात करने की कोशिश नहीं की है। तो फिर हम कैसे देख रहे हैं कि ग्रामीण में हम जाकर के लोगों के बारे में सोच रहे हैं या बात कर रहे हैं, हम फाइनेंशियल की बात कर रहे हैं बट वो लैंग्वेज क्या है? अगर महिलाओं को आप सिखाएंगे और अगर आप बात कर रहे हो कि हम उनको एजुकेशन या बाकी चीज के बारे में बताएं तो सबसे पहले तो हमें लैंग्वेज की ध्यान देना होगा। सो थैंक यू सो मच। मुझे बस इतना ही कहना था।
Acha. So, please.
Quickly, I'll take the questions. What you said, see, you have to reskill the people. There is no shortcut for it because the moment the repeat jobs are there, they will get automated. Whatever repeat jobs are there, once you have done it, you will not need a manpower for it. The cars are made by robotics. Everything is going to happen like that. So in these repeat kind of jobs, when you are replacing, you have to reskill our people because automation is for benefits. It's for finer production, better quality productions. You can't stop it in the growth. Like my co-panelists also talk about it. It is bound to come. But you have to continuously bring into it. And the kind of products you are bringing, Indians do have brains. They have solutions. But our system sometimes sort of makes them claustrophobic. They are not able to come out of it in manufacturing sector. Like I remember I went to one of the cluster of MSMEs And there they said, मैम अगर यहाँ से हमको लोडिंग अनलोडिंग का मिल जाए और कस्टम क्लियरेंस मिल जाए, हम वो सब बना सकते हैं जो इम्पोर्ट हो रहा है, हम सब बना सकते हैं अफोर्डेबल रेट पे, you know, that kind of a thing. And then you have these silos. Then suddenly the municipal authorities will come up कि ट्रक जो है वो दिन में नहीं जाएगा, finished. Now they have to wait for the night. They will so do the loading and unloading. The night they'll go. So we have to think of holistic thing. What we were discussing before. That is the solution. And talking to her, the language is used. You know, the technology has helped every translation now that is possible. It's not transliteration. And let me tell you, on the insurance and various benefits of this scheme, you have to go through the right path. You know, at higher level, it can be conceptuals. हाँ, ऊंचे लेवल पे आप कंसेप्ट पे जा सकते हो, बट आप नीचे जाओगे ना तो आपको एसओपी करना पड़ेगा. अगर सबको इंश्योरेंस देना है, आपको हेल्थ का, एक्सीडेंट का, बैंक मैनेजर या पोस्ट ऑफिस मैनेजर को बोल दो कि भाई आप उसको समझाओगे अपने क्लाइंट को, और उसका वो 12 रुपए और 312 रुपया काटोगे साल में एक बार, और अपने आप सारे फोल्ड में आ गए, और जहां अच्छा काम हुआ है वहां यही किया. तो आपका एसओपी होना चाहिए कि जो डिलीवरी पॉइंट है वो समझाए उनको. और ऐसा नहीं है कि महिलाएं नहीं समझ रही है. देखिए, मेरे को शॉक लगा डीपनिंग डिजिटल पेमेंट पे, जब मैंने यूपीआई पे काम कर रही थी, मैंने तो शहर का सोचा था और पढ़े लिखे लोगों का सोचा था. मुझे आश्चर्य हुआ जब वो गांव गांव बिना पढ़े लिखे के पास भी पहुंच गया. मेरी हाउसमेट जो बिल्कुल एक अक्षर लिखना नहीं जानती थी, वो भी कट 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 करती है उसमें. तो आप ये समझिए कि ऐसा मत सोचिए कि उसको नहीं मालूम, समझाने वाला चाहिए, और वो समझाने वाला राइट अथॉरिटी चाहिए, वो पकड़ लेते हैं उसको. ठीक है.
पहला सवाल मेरा ये था कि जो आप बता रहे हो कि गांव-गांव में पहुंच चुका है, रूरल इंडिया में लोग पहुंच चुके हैं, डिजिटल हो चुके हैं. मैं बिल्कुल आपकी बात से सहमत हूं, बट उसमें मुझे आपसे पूछना है कि कितनी प्रतिशत महिलाएं हैं जो डिजिटल एक्सेस है. और दूसरा ये कि जो आप फाइनेंशियल की बात कर रहे हैं कि जो बीमा की बात होती है या बाकी इंश्योरेंस की बात होती है, आप रूरल में जाके उनसे पूछिए कि कितने लोगों को पता है कि ये इंश्योरेंस भी है और आप ले सकते हो. और जो बैंक मैनेजर वहां अकाउंट्स खुलवाने जाते हैं, कितने लोगों को उनको बता करके वो इंश्योरेंस दिया जाता है या उनको समझा करके दिया जाता है. बहुत बारी मेरे साथ ऐसे हुआ था कि मैं अकाउंट्स खुलवाने गई थी, मुझे नहीं पता था, बट उन्होंने अपने से खोल दिया, उन्होंने बताया नहीं. मेरा पेमेंट जब कट गया तो मैंने पूछा कि भाई मेरा पेमेंट कट गया. उसने बोला कि ये आपने इंश्योरेंस लिया. मुझे नहीं पता था.
So, I think the issue is also financial literacy and financial literacy in local languages.
देखिए, नहीं, फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी है, आरबीआई ने हर भाषा में बनाए हुए हैं उनको समझाने के लिए. बट आप जो कह रहे हो, बैंकर को इंस्ट्रक्शन मिल गया कि हमको उसके हर खाते में होना ही होना है,
बिल्कुल,
तो हो जाएगा,
बिल्कुल,
पर उसको बताना भी है, उसको समझाना भी है. इस बात से मैं पूरी तरह आपसे सहमत हूँ, और उसमें आप जैसे लोगों की जरूरत है. आप समझिए और 10 लोगों को और समझाइए.
बस बात वही आ गई ना कि
वो तो एक्सटेंशन तो करना पड़ेगा ना. ऐसे तो नहीं
हम
होगा,
ये नहीं कह रहे कि
नहीं होगा.
हम ये नहीं कह रहे कि हम नहीं कर रहे हैं या आप नहीं कर रहे हैं या कोई नहीं करना चाह रहा है. हम यहाँ पर बैठे हैं, हम बात कर रहे हैं, तो इसका मतलब है कि हम इसमें काम करना चाह रहे हैं. बट हम सिर्फ आज यहाँ बात कर रहे हैं. अगर हम अपनी ही हकीकत देखें कि हम अपनी फैमिली में या अपने पड़ोसियों में या अपने लोगों में कितना इस चीज को हम यूज करते हैं या लोगों तक पहुंचाते हैं, तो शायद उसका 1% तो आप सोच ही मत.
What is India doing? India thinking? I mean, there is government, there is civil society, there is media. I don't know what we mean by India. If you meant government, I can answer that question at the government level. Of course, industry is going crazy about AI. Everyone is deploying it. Those business models are not adequately understood by civil society yet. But there is a catch-up being done by the government. Now, on the governance side, there's a lot of interesting intent, statement of intent on trust, safety, transparency, so on and so forth, as I told you, has come out from Ministry of Information Technology. One important thing that is missing as a principle, they mentioned 8 principles, similar to what I just said, is on the consumer grievance. And I think that will be a huge area where AI can help. Because what is AI? It's basically the prompt that you put. But even to be able to put a prompt, you need to be informed to get the right response. So biases and all these. I don't want to get technical. RBI is deploying AI. Finance Ministry is deploying AI. Disaster Management Departments is deploying AI. You can't, name a government department which is not thinking through AI. The question says there is not adequate understanding of the guardrails with respect to these principles on privacy, trust, safety, so on and so forth. So that's a conversation that's happening right now on the AI side. One last conversation where a huge gap is, sir, is on the liability, because we are moving towards agentic AI. Now, if an AI agent takes a decision and you act upon it, causes medical negligence or a accident on the road or what have you over there, who do you impute liability to? How do you protect copyright? So these are the big questions being dealt with. So that's what I think India is thinking.
Okay.
Abhishek, I have a follow-on here.
We have two questions, but before that, I think Dr. Mehru.
I just want to respond to a set of questions that came up on social security. Informal sector को कैसे हम परिभाषित करते हैं, तो मैं हिंदी में बोलने की कोशिश करता हूँ. मैं 3-4 बातें इस विषय में करना चाहता हूँ. पहली चीज तो हमको ये ध्यान रखना चाहिए कि परिभाषा स्थापित है. 1993 से और 2003 से अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर परिभाषित किया जाता है. एक तो इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस ऑफ लेबर स्टैटिस्टिशियंस की 93 की कॉन्फ्रेंस थी. उसमें जो इकाइयां हैं, असंगठित क्षेत्र की इकाइयां, उनको परिभाषित किया गया है. और 10 साल बाद 2003 में वर्कर्स को, श्रम बल को भी इस तरीके से परिभाषित किया जाएगा. परिभाषित वर्कर को इस प्रकार किया गया है कि जिसके पास न पेंशन, न डेथ एंड डिसेबिलिटी इंश्योरेंस, न मैटरनिटी बेनिफिट, न हेल्थ, ये 4 बेनिफिट्स जिसके पास नहीं है. और आपको ये जान के ताज्जुब होगा कि हमारे देश में भी और दुनिया भर में इन मुद्दों पे आंकड़े इकट्ठा ही नहीं होते थे. वो केवल 2004 के बाद ही इकट्ठा होने शुरू हुए. तो हमें मालूम है ये जो 90% की और 85% की हम बात करते हैं, वो इसी आधार पे करते हैं कि ये परिभाषाएं अब स्थापित हैं अच्छी तरीके से. PLFS में इसके आंकड़े हैं, पहली बात. दूसरी बात, कई बार बात की गई, सिंधुश्री जी ने की, ब्रजेश जी ने की, कई लोगों ने की कि हमारे वेलफेयर बोर्ड्स हैं, कई स्कीमें हैं, अटल बीमा योजना, श्रमजीवी मानधन इत्यादि इत्यादि, इनके संग क्या हो रहा है. और ये सब असंगठित क्षेत्र के कामगारों के लिए ही हैं. दिक्कत ये है कि वेलफेयर बोर्ड्स दक्षिणी प्रदेशों में, खासतौर से केरल और तमिलनाडु इत्यादि में, लगभग 20 या 25 सेक्टर्स में कार्यान्वित कई दशकों से हैं. दिक्कत ये है कि आप इनको अगर और बढ़ाते चले जाएंगे, अलग अलग सेक्टर्स के आधार पे बढ़ाएंगे, तो हम ये मतलब हार मान के बैठ गए हैं. इसका अर्थ ये है कि हम हार मान के बैठ गए हैं कि असंगठित क्षेत्र के जो 90% लोग हैं, उनको हम धीमे धीमे करके कभी इस मनरेगा वर्कर को पकड़ लिया, तो कभी टॉडी वर्कर को पकड़ लिया, तो कभी इससे काम चलने नहीं वाला. कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्कर को इससे नहीं काम चलने वाला. हमारे पास समय बहुत कम रह गया. मैं यही बात समझाने की कोशिश कर रहा था कि केवल 15 साल रह गए हैं. हमें एक सिस्टम बनाना है जिसमें 90% लोगों को, जिनके पास आज सामाजिक सुरक्षा नहीं है, उनको सामाजिक सुरक्षा दी जाए. तो पहली चीज इसमें हेल्थ को लेकर के मोटी बात यह है कि हमको ये मानना पड़ेगा कि जो नेशनल हेल्थ पॉलिसी है 2017 की, मैं आप सबको याद दिला दूं कि वो ये कहती है कि आज की तारीख में, आज मतलब 2017 की पॉलिसी है, उसमें इस नीतिगत रूप से ये लिखा गया है कि हम आज 1.1% GDP का खर्च कर रहे हैं सरकार द्वारा, केंद्र सरकार, राज्य सरकार सब मिला करके. तब 1.1, वो कोविड के जमाने में 1.3 जरूर हुआ था, मगर उस 17 की नीति में ये निर्णय करा गया था कि 24-25 में, यानी कि हम जिस साल में अब हैं, उस साल में हम 2.5% पे पहुंचेंगे. ब्रजेश जी, हम 2.5% के इर्द गिर्द भी कहीं नहीं हैं. हम 1.3% पे ही अटके हुए हैं. और इस संदर्भ में हमें याद रखना चाहिए कि आप अब उसमें वाटर एंड सैनिटेशन जोड़ दीजिएगा तो ये आंख में धूल झोंकने के बराबर बात है. आपका तो स्वास्थ्य सेवाओं पे जो खर्चा है वो स्वास्थ्य सेवाओं पे खर्चा है। आप पानी उसमें नहीं मिला सकते, लिटरली और फिगरेटिवली मैं कह रहा हूं। अब मैं मोटी एक सिर्फ बात पे आता हूं। देखिए, व्हाट इज द वे फॉरवर्ड? दैट्स रियली व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन, कि हमें कैसे आगे बढ़ना है। इस विषय में हमें इस प्रकार सोचना होगा कि स्वास्थ्य सेवाएं तो they are a right of every individual and therefore the government has no choice but to increase the expenditures. कोई दो राय है ही नहीं। राज्य और केंद्र सरकारें मिला करके 2.5 तो उनको आज करना पड़ेगा। चीन तो 2.5 मतलब 10 साल से पहले से है, उनका स्वास्थ्य का स्तर कहीं हमसे बेहतर है। मगर हम 90% के पास वो जो पेंशन, डेथ एंड डिसेबिलिटी इंश्योरेंस और मैटरनिटी बेनिफिट कैसे पहुंचाने वाले, उसमें हमें I mean, I have a whole paper on this. If those of you are interested, I've worked this out. It's published in an international journal. It's available on various national websites. Scheme basically ये होनी पड़ेगी, और मुझे स्कीम शब्द से बड़ी नफरत है और मैं उसका इस्तेमाल नहीं करना चाहता था, मगर सोच ये होनी पड़ेगी एक देशव्यापी और सारे वर्कर्स की। सिर्फ आप गिग वर्कर्स, प्लेटफॉर्म वर्कर्स को नहीं कवर कर सकते। अरे भाई, गिग और प्लेटफॉर्म वर्कर किस प्रकार का वर्कर है? वो भी उसी तरीके का 58% का सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयड ही वर्कर है। तो हमको बार बार गिग और प्लेटफॉर्म की बात करके हमको ये भ्रमित न करिए कि हम अरे सारे असंगठित क्षेत्र को कवर कर रहे हैं, हम सारे स्वरोजगारियों को कवर कर रहे हैं। अरे स्वरोजगारियों की संख्या बढ़ती चली जा रही है। मोटी बात, आखिरी बात, जल्द खत्म करूंगा। देखिए, स्कीमा ऐसा होना पड़ेगा कि हमारे भारत सरकार को, राज्य सरकारों को इस पे निर्णय लेना पड़ेगा कि जो सबसे गरीब असंगठित क्षेत्र के श्रम बल है, लगभग 20% मान लीजिए, वो अगर कैजुअल जितना वर्क करे, चाहे वो वहां हो, कृषि में जुड़ा हो, चाहे वो गैर कृषि क्षेत्र में जुड़ा हो, चाहे सर्विसेज में हो, इंडस्ट्री में हो, कंस्ट्रक्शन में, किसी में भी हो, इन सब के लिए एक कार्यक्रम which will have to be part of the social security code, sir. सोशल सिक्योरिटी कोड 2020 का आपने पारित तो करवा दिया, मगर जरूरत ये थी कि उसमें जो दो छोटे छोटे आधे पेज के 2 क्लॉज हैं, जबकि 100 क्लॉजेस की आपकी सोशल सिक्योरिटी कोड है, उसमें आधी हमारे 90% वर्कर्स के लिए होनी चाहिए। I'm just going to finish to say that there is no choice but the government has to provide for the premiums to be paid on an annual basis for all casual workers, for all self-employed workers, my last sentence, for all self-employed who account for the remaining 58% we will have to ensure that both employer and employee, wherever you can identify them, both are contributing, and the government will have to come up with a matching grant. There's just no getting away from that. Let me stop there at that point.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
We have 2 questions very quickly. I think now we have 4 questions.
I want to ask you.
I actually have 2 comments.
Can we have it like concluding remarks, because
I need to make some comments, please, Sanchita.
Please, before you.
At 1 o'clock.
But I want to therefore say, if you're going to close at 1 o'clock, I think there are 2 panelists here who haven't had a chance to respond to the questions, himself and myself. Not now then, you work it backwards. If you want to allow some more questions, please do, but please leave 5 minutes at the end for him and 5 minutes for me, and then you can wrap it up.
Okay,
So
but I think we will not have much time to answer the questions, but at least let's hear what they have to say.
So, Sanchita, I want to preface that I have 3 comments to make, right? And I'll make them very quickly. First of all, I do want to recognize Ms. Khuller here. She was the joint secretary for a few days and the additional secretary in the Ministry of Finance when NSCC was launched, and I really appreciate her contribution. Of course, Dr. Mehrotra was part of Institute of Manpower Planning and then became another entity, and then Skill Coordination Board. But given that, I think there are 4 things I want to make, and I'll make them very quickly. First of all, I fully agree with Professor Mehrotra about the educational qualification of workers. If you're looking at the future of work, right, you've got to be able to take those who are in work and upskill them or reskill them, right, to take on the new job. Okay. Now the challenge here is, first of all, the employers don't have time to release them. In academics, you have academic leave, you have to do refresher courses, etc. There's nothing to provide in the
in the manufacturing sector industry. The second thing, which is even greater challenge, there is no skill development or training institution which is open in the evening or the weekends that I can join a program and do anything. The third, and this is an issue which I would like Professor Mehrotra to reflect on, what is the maximum number of hours for a Python course or a Java course to be able to skilled to do machine learning or whatever it is? If you, like Professor Maida did ChatGPT, it's 40 hours. What is a short-term course in NSDC? It's 90 hours. So vilifying a short-term course and saying it doesn't perform any part is perhaps to be rethought, because nobody was listening to what industry wanted and nobody is listening to what the worker wanted. So we went out and asked the industry, what are the competencies that you require for this job? And we got 3,400 job competencies around which programs are developed. We were vilified at that point of time. So we said, you choose any 80, we'll send them to the UK, choose any another 80, we'll send them to Australia. Let's see what they say about it. They said your courses are better than ours. So I think this whole short-term, long-term thing has to be rethought in that way. If you want to upskill, the Foresight Future Skills courses under the NASSCOM banner, which the ministry is running for ML, blockchain, etc., are all courses with certain hours. The other point I want to say is this, again, this point was made by Professor Mehrotra, was that we're going to get old before the next 15 years. Interestingly, the number of jobs that are required in geriatric care, the number of physicians, the assistants, the other whole, right? No one has even dreamt about it, about what the requirement would be.
Dilip, that's a subject for 9 years.
No.
I'm chairman of HelpAge International. I think it's linked to what I want to say about the whole system.
Yeah. So I'm saying,
don't only say no one has thought about it.
No. I'm just saying in India, HelpAge has done it, but
and there's a problem there. We can't solve it as jobs. Okay, I'll come to that.
Fine.
Okay.
No issues right.
Okay,
so
can we
my
move
last point actually here is that you mentioned Dr. Mehra about urban planning and factory planning, right? I'm a doctor. Okay, I mean, it's a respectful. So if we reduce or increase the FIR for factories, the cost of land will reduce dramatically. We can get more productive employment and create more jobs. Nobody is people need to think. Sorry, I don't want to say nobody is thinking, because again, you got to think in the overall framework of what actually improves productivity, economy, and look at a whole aspect there. These are the points. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, I think you had something to say.
I am Sohad.
Very
I
quickly,
come
yeah?
from, I will just run through the question. I am Sohad and I come from Swanidhi Initiative. We predominantly work with parliamentarians, state governments, ministries alike on various sustainable initiatives. What I want to understand is that there is a temporal mismatch between the states need to create more jobs versus sustainable development, especially right now, when thanks to this a discussion at the risk of sounding a reductivist, one thing I could glean was that the state needs to create more jobs or incentivize job creation by other players, if anything, and if push comes to shove. But how does the state manage this temporal mismatch between their sustainable development targets? Because what happens is the state then goes on to NDC meetings and signs up for emission control and has to agree to EU norms about reducing their carbon emissions, and then they really have to basically pander to everything in spite of being a developing economy. So how does the state manage, if anybody can answer that, how does the state manage this temporal mismatch between both of these expectations? Thank you so much for this discussion.
हाँ, आपको मैं दे रही हूँ पहले मैम.
मेरा एक just आखिरी सवाल ये है कि Grow 1 and Grow 2 reports का future क्या है?
Future projects, we hope. But we also keep on talking about, these things in different events for, wherever possible, influencing, informing policies. We are not supposed to influence policy as such, as part of this project. But yes, informing policies. And also, as I presented, I don't know whether you were there that time, we already are thinking of some work, expanding regionally or looking at some intersectional issues.
I think one of the future of this work is that everyone who's over here could start circulating this discourse and through reports and everything. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
थैंक यू। सभी जो वक्ता लोगों ने बात किया दे आर वो अपने सब्जेक्ट की अथॉरिटी हैं, मेरा उनको प्रणाम। मैं फोकस था कि जो वे फॉरवर्ड आज आपने बताए थे उस पर कुछ डिस्कशन होगा, हम कुछ आगे लेके चलेंगे। अगर हुआ है तो मैं नहीं समझ सका, दैट इज माय फेलियर। लेकिन जो मैं कह रहा हूं कि ये जो इंटेलेक्चुअल और बाकी के लोग आइसोलेशन में काम करते करते 75 साल देश को आजाद हो गए, सड़क पर खड़े हम चिल्लाते हैं कि कुछ नहीं हो रहा, ये जो थिंक टैंक वाले हैं ये भी चिल्लाते हैं कुछ नहीं हो रहा है। तो ये तरीका हाउ लॉन्ग इट विल वर्क, ये कब तक चलेगा? पैथी बदलिए, तरीका बदलिए, मिलके काम करने का कुछ सोचिए। कोई भी सिनेमा के पीछे स्टोरी राइटर होते, देन डायरेक्टर होते, एक्टर कोई और होते हैं। हमारे इस लेबर के डिस्कोर्स में ये पूरा मिसिंग है। सब लोग ओवरबर्डेंड हैं, चिल्ला रहे हैं, एंड ऑफ कोर्स उनकी विद्वता में, अथॉरिटी में कोई कमी नहीं। जिनको सुनो दिन भर सुनते रहो तो भी कम है, बट इफ इट इज नॉट कमिंग टू एक्शन, हम जितने लोग एनजीओ से आए थे, फील्ड से आए थे, हमारा अप्रोच, अंडरस्टैंडिंग एकदम अलग है। आप जो बता रहे हैं वो गलत नहीं बता रहे हैं, बट होता ही नहीं कुछ, तो फिर हम क्या करें उसको सुन के? और कुछ होना चाहिए, तो इसके लिए आपका इंटेलेक्चुअल क्या काम करता है भाई? Why you are not coming with suggestion, action plan? You do this. You are not supposed to hit. We will hit. But tell us where to hit, how to hit. That actually job with the think tanks. That is missing. That is causing. ये सब उसी के कारण हो रहा है, ऐसा मेरा मानना है। Please don't take me otherwise.
No, we are
Thank
going
you.
to hopefully take that the last point should be the way forward. Should be, but of course he'll have the
Yes.
freedom. No, one second,
Yes.
one second.
Dr. Bhalla and Mr. Mehta.
No. This Poonam wants to say something. Poonam,
Okay.
please. And then yes, the last just should be about this question. Will we have a different way forward?
Okay.
Okay?
Just to share, we will after the event, we'll have a press release, but we'll also have an outcome document. We'll not take the questions, we'll try to take the solutions from the discussions today, and we'll circulate. And as I said, future is more projects, more initiatives, more discussions. That's the way we work.
There's a problem with that, and we'll talk about it.
So just a few quick comments. First to you. The government has already exercised the choice, yes, to you, the choice of investing only 1.3% even today after 6-8 years in health. So again, it's a question of priority, I would like to say. Second, in terms of, we've talked a lot about convergence. Sindhu also raised that. Convergence we think only will happen at the national level, and it doesn't happen. It happens at, if you have tried, we've set up this district working groups, and the role was chaired by DM and, by the DM. I find whether it was COVID or it is business as usual, normal, I don't know what happened, and people like Sindhu will know better, and Arunaji, what happened to the role and planning of the DM? In fact, during COVID, I kept saying, every decision is made by the PM. We need the DM. If in tribal areas, when there was no COVID, why did we close schools? Why did we close everything? And if the DM had a role, so greater decentralization. And if you're talking about convergence, I find it's needed at the district level, and it happens at the district level. And don't expect the senior bureaucracy or the politicians, national politicians, or NGOs or anyone else to do it. Do it there.
Okay, so.
Yes, thank you. She's already
1 minute, finally, just one more point. And that is about, we also have to now create jobs for the aged.
I'm coming to, thank you. That's exactly, I will bring that in. And Brijesh, you asked the right question. What is the way forward? Okay, even with this report, we may have solutions. Do you think sort of the policymakers are going to pay attention only to this report? There are many other people who have researched and they are putting their reports forward, right? So the policymaker, the poor person in government, and Sindhu's been there and I was there for a short while, सब किसकी सुनूं? ये भी कह रही हैं, वो भी कह रही हैं. They're all very honorable people with good research. तो हमारे मन में तो खिचड़ी बन जाती. So I'll do what I sense to me is the right thing to do. So it's that system is not working. आपने कहा कि और schemes नहीं चाहिए, सोच बदलनी है. बड़ी अच्छी बात आपने की. So in the planning commission, when I joined the planning commission, the Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh ji, told me this, कि लोग बहुत निराश हो गए हैं. सब सिविल सोसाइटी के लोग भी कह रहे हैं प्लानिंग कमीशन बंद कर दो. ये प्लान बनाते जाते हैं, कुछ फायदा नहीं हो रहा है. ये कह रहे थे. तो हमारे जो गवर्नमेंट के लोग थे वो भी कहते थे, फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री के लोग कहते थे कि दिस प्लानिंग कमीशन बनाती है बट दे डोंट नो व्हाट इज द रियल अमाउंट ऑफ मनी अवेलेबल. हर साल बदलता है. तो आई मीन यू कांट जस्ट डिसाइड कि फॉर 5 years दिस इज गोइंग टू बी द थिंग. वी हैव टू रिस्पॉन्ड एवरी टाइम. सो गवर्नमेंट के अंदर भी ये झगड़े थे कि ये प्लानिंग का सिस्टम ठीक नहीं है और सिविल सोसाइटी कह रही थी कि फायदा नहीं हो रहा है. तो देयर वाज अ डिमांड फ्रॉम इंडस्ट्री to abolish the planning commission and to substitute it with an implementation commission. So I'm saying all stakeholders, the government itself, including Dr. Manmohan Singh, the civil society, as well as the business sector, said this is not working. We need another way. तो आपने कहा SDG की बात हो रही थी पहले कि कितनी SDGs हैं? 17. तभी तो it doesn't matter what you're doing, it fits into something. But everybody chooses his cause. That matters the most to me. I know the most about it. And there's a ministry, of course, which is associated with particular SDGs. और CSR वाले भी choose करते हैं कि हमारी business के साथ साथ ये चीज़ है या हम जानते हैं. So everyone is getting into silos. All three stakeholders, whether it's the government, experts, as well as the people with the money, are all into each of these, or some of them spread over 2 or 3. तो ये आइंस्टाइन ने कहा था पहले, पर उसके पहले बताने से ये मैं कह सकता हूँ कि पीपल हैव मेड एन एस्टिमेट कि हाउ लॉन्ग विल इट टेक द वर्ल्ड टू अचीव द एसडीजी गोल्स. अब ट्रेंड्स को देखना चाहिए. इफ वी कीप अचीविंग द एसडीजी गोल्स एंड देयर आर मेनी ऑफ देम, सम बीइंग अचीव्ड, सम नॉट बीइंग अचीव्ड, बट ओवरऑल इफ वी कीप डूइंग इट द वे वी आर, वी विल अचीव दीज एसडीजी गोल्स जिसका टारगेट था 2030 in 2087. So the point comes that Einstein ने कहा था कि if you're trying to solve some systemic problem with the same approach that created the problem, you're mad. So we've got to think about a different way of solving complex problems. Do not break them into parts. Think of the whole system and interaction between things in the system. Now this is very, very difficult, talking again about the SDGs. वो उसमें 17 SDG हैं. तो मैंने ये कैलकुलेट किया कि अगर हर जगह में all 17 may not be a problem. कई तो लोग समुद्र के पास नहीं हैं, so the ones associated with the ocean won't apply, for example. But any place, whether it is Arizona or California, they have at least 7 or 8. Climate की problem वहाँ भी है, displacement की problem वहाँ भी है, right? Poverty, homelessness की problem वहाँ भी है. So even the richest parts have at least 7 or 8 problems to address. So how many combinations are there of 17 problems taken out of a set of 17? 94 million. मतलब यही है कि one set of solutions cannot apply in every locality. So there, to Poonam's point, the scientific way to go forward is to say all problems, whether they're environmental problems, livelihood problems, social exclusion, women not being treated the same way, Rajasthan is different perhaps to Nagaland, but all the problems are there, but they take their own form. The system takes its own form locally. So the way forward is local system solutions produced by communities, and then the people with power outside supporting them in the implementation of their solutions. This is the scientific way now for the way forward. The local, within the locality, people respecting each other's views. I mean, women's views included, men's views. The people are concerned more about the water, and the people are concerned more about feeding the child and food. This is the whole system. So the governance has to move down. And external experts with data, to the point again about 94 million, you cannot generalize from the data and say, based on the data, this is your solution. So will we change this way? Now, who loses out in this way? And coming back to your projects, this is the present way. And लोग कह रहे हैं कि एक ये बदलाव हो गया है from planning commission to नीति आयोग. At least with नीति आयोग we get more projects. You know, they have a budget and they get more projects. With planning commission they were quite difficult about it.
It is translation only, planning to नीति.
Okay, that's right. Something method is the same. The method is the same. We're outsourcing our thinking to experts. I'm using the word again. The people's thinking is being outsourced to experts. And yes, when you outsource it to planning commission, to private consultants, and like we said earlier, everyone has got their point of view. That's one खिचड़ी हो जाती है. दूसरी बात ये हो जाती है कि we all compete with each other then. मेरी project अच्छी है and so on. And you're going to get into that trap after this. But finally to older people. Look, I have for the last 9 years been chairman of HelpAge International, where our concern was about the world is not finding good solutions for the needs of older people. And since the numbers of older people are increasing because of progress and development and reduction of poverty and improvement of health, ज़्यादा हो गई हैं. So what is the solution? If the solutions are one, their rights should be recognized. India is far ahead of the rest of the world. Our Supreme Court has a friend of the Supreme Court on older people's issues. We passed much early on laws regarding pensions and now going further. If children don't look after their older parents and they can be put into jail and so on. We are far ahead in terms of recognizing the rights of older people. But what is the present economic solution? उनको pension देनी है. तो pension का पैसा कैसे आएगा? Tax करना पड़ेगा किसी को. और फिर उसमें ideological बात हो जाती है. पर टैक्स काफी हो नहीं रहे हैं. So the present way of the economic thinking which is being used to solve these complex problems which are to be solved as social problems is not there. So we came in the case of older people also to look around कि कहाँ, आपने किसी ने कहा था कोविड की बात में, you said so, कि which parts of the world was the COVID problem addressed the best, more completely, meet the economic problems and people's health safety problems also. In the world, the country that did the best was Vietnam. And in India, the state that did the best was Kerala. And in fact, internationally, people are saying Kerala ka model humko seekhna chahiye. Because Kerala has been able to, women's inclusion, education, literacy, pehle hi, before it was, as I say, priority or ideology from the top. कि ये करना वो करना है, वो हो रहा था. Of course, there's some origin in history कि वो कैसे हुआ. Similarly, perhaps in Vietnam भी ऐसे ही था. But the solution is that. Now, how are we going to change our thinking? Because we believe that, central planning and from the top and allocations from the top will solve people's problems. They will not solve complex systemic problems. So ये बदलना है. So we ask in our country, it's in our constitution. The whole spirit of the constitution was governance by the people for the people. That is the basic structure of the constitution. Then we did 73rd, 74th amendment. So अभी भी आप कह रहे हैं, is actually there's a devolution of governance and power and money to them. This not there. So if you want to talk about the political agenda, the political priorities, whether it's to solve problems of women in the rural areas that they're not respected enough, able to earn enough and with dignity, or whatever, anywhere. Urban is different. But everywhere, it's a systemic problem. Can we please move together and say, look, the new way forward is not these, expert discussions. काफी किए हैं. If we keep on doing the same thing and hope to solve this systemic problem, like Einstein said, what? I think we are just indulging in madness. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bhalla. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. I think we'll all agree that we had a really good discussion and maybe a little bit of debate as well. I will also not say anything much. Only thing is that before